on public safety, justice, and rehabilitation. Our goal is to ensure that policies reflect both community protection and fairness within the legal system. To provide context, Guam's three strikes law was established under Public Law 32-049. This law creates a three strikes provision for habitual offenders of serious crimes. In essence, individuals convicted of 3 or more felony offenses face mandatory life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The intent behind the law was to deter repeat offenders and enhance public safety. However, it has also remained an important question regarding proportional sentencing, prison overcrowding, and the balance between punishment and rehabilitation. Today's discussion will bring together government leaders, legal professionals, and community stakeholders to evaluate the law's effectiveness in reducing crime and repeat offenses. For today's forum, we will be asking our panelists who will introduce short 10 guiding questions divided into related to our topic. Our time today is limited, so we will do our best to get through all the questions. To help us stay on schedule, Brandon, who is seated here at the front in the audience, will be keeping track of time with a bell. You'll hear 2 rings. The first means there's 1 minute remaining, and the second signals that your time is up. Each panelist will have 5 minutes to speak once they begin. If anyone else in the panelists would like to add, you have 2 minutes.
Buenas and half a day. Senator Borja, Senator Terlahi, AG Moylan, Chief of Police, Mr. Ignacio, Director Fred Bordalio, Judge Jonathan Kwan, and Executive Director, Mr. Stephen Hattori. If I've missed anyone, I will be sure to acknowledge you later. Oh, well, Senator Teitigly at the back. She's there at the back. You should come forward. You're good? Welcome. It's always a good day in Manilao when we see influential leaders here on our campus engaging with our students, sharing the knowledge and the experiences that you've had over the years in service to our people of Guam and the region. So si Diyos maasi for your presence. The goal of this particular forum, as our students have been the planners and the coordinators, is to foster community dialogue by bringing together people in the judicial system, lawmakers, law enforcement, and the public to discuss the impacts, the controversies, questions of fairness, balancing crime, punishment, public safety, and second chances in Guam's justice system. I also think it's a milestone and a point in our students' history to be able to engage with you, to be able to ask the tough questions and be critical of your responses, because it is through that clash of ideas, the arguments and the debates, that we come together to answers, to resolutions and solutions that best fit our community. Our students are very fortunate to be able to learn from faculty members in the School of Business and Public Administration. They have classmates of all ranges, young and more mature classmates as well, and everyone in between. And it's this kind of community that the university fosters. And just as important, the classroom as a platform for debate and open, candid conversations. And so I thank each of you, leaders, influencers, students, members of the Guam community, faculty, media is here today also. Please continue to keep your eye on this institution, because we are moving the boulders, huge boulders, to improve the quality of life of our students and our community. These are the leaders who will replace us in years to come. And I look forward to their contributions. I look forward to hearing some of the critical questions and to see how we can continue to engage and move our community forward. Sidus Maasi for your presence, for your participation, and I wish you all a fantastic forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Santos Bamba. Next, please join me in welcoming Dr. Roseanne Jones, the Dean of School of Business, Public and Public Administration, for her remarks.
Good morning, everyone. It really feels like I've just been here. The students at SBPA have been on a roll with many presentations this week, culminating with, we had an event here on Saturday looking at peace building in the Pacific. What this conference is going to focus on, I'm sure today, is looking closer to home and perhaps peace building here. How we deal with the situations that face us. And I have to thank our students for organizing this panel. And I must thank all of the participants today. I'm seeing many of you again. You are wonderful advocates and supporters of our programs. You make us better. And I think in tribute, we should recognize you for all that you do. Many of you, through your agencies and your organizations, deal with real life concerns, the things that we study here at SBPA, that our students learn from you, from your experiences. I don't think we say enough how much we value and appreciate you. And that not just you for your presence here, but all who are behind you in your organizations. Because you really are the front lines. You really are facing the day-to-day. And what you are learning, we really value here. To incorporate into our programs, to make them real, to make them academic, but also very practical and applied. You also show them where the new issues are, the currency of their learning, and challenge them to learn more. But you also help us all to be better citizens, better informed citizens, to take what you know, to take your experience, to take the challenges that you face, and appreciate you in the community. So I want to say you have a very valuable role, and you are with us always, and I recognize that, I see that, and please share that with all of your agencies. I appreciate all of you, and I really look forward to the lessons that we'll learn today hear from you on this panel. Thank you to the students for making this again possible. Behind the scenes at SBPA, there is a lot going on that makes this all look calm and natural, but believe me, it's quite a different story sometimes. All very good energy that encourages and advances academia. So thank you so much, and I look forward to sitting in the audience and taking notes with the rest of us.
Thank you, Dr. Dean Jones. Next, please join me in welcoming Dr. Ron McNinch, Chair of the Criminal Justice and Public Administration Program, to share his remarks.
I hate karaoke. Okay. I have karaoke fear, so I have to overcome my karaoke fear. Sorry. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ron McNinch. I'm Chair of Public Administration, Legal Studies. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us today. I feel like I'm in an alumni association meeting also here today. Of course, Chief Steve was our longstanding student. Director Anton was our longstanding student. Attorney General, Mr. Attorney General Doug Moylan is an ever-present, active patron of our programs here. We greatly appreciate all your help and assistance. Judge Kwan is joining us, Mr. Hattori is joining us, and finally, Speaker Talahe is joining us also today. She's a long-standing full-time professor in our division. She worked with us for many years, and thank you very much for being here with us today. We appreciate the assistance of the Senior Vice President, of course, Dean Jones, the leader of our school, and most especially Professor Uggen, who really puts together very nice public events and the true learning that our students do in organizing and putting these things together. And everybody, let's give our students a hand for their wonderful work. Now, I can just talk, or I can speak my mind, and it's really up to the audience which one you'd like me to do. So should I speak my mind or talk? Okay. Okay, so in that case, if I'm going to speak my mind, blame Kiana, because she invited me here today. Okay, that's part of it. You know, after I turned 60, I'd had 7 heart attacks in the last 12 years, and so after that I said, you know, I'm going to speak my mind from now on, and I'm not going to hold back. No more filter for me. All right. So back in COVID, we had a nice faculty meeting during COVID. It was all online on Zoom, and everyone's talking about proas and how nice it must have been for ancestors to have sailed out to islands and how idyllic it was and stuff like that. And I told the faculty members, because they had this really rosy picture of sailing and stuff, I had to tell the faculty, I used to work for a yacht club. I worked 3 years on a yacht club. We had long sails twice a month, overnight sails, where you're on a small boat with 12 other people. It's not idyllic. After about 3 or 4 hours, you're going to want to start throwing somebody off. That's how it really is. And that's the reality. It's 99% boredom and 1% terror on a boat. You want to know real terror? Watch what happens when you have a fire on a small boat and dealing with that. I mean, that's true terror. But it got me to thinking, what kind of people had to be able to survive long voyages on small boats? If you think about it, only certain kind of people could survive that kind of long voyage over several weeks. And so I began to develop in my mind a kind of thought about Darwinism. That is, I think that there's something genetically in people who populated these islands, Chamorro people and others in our region, in the Carolinian Islands, personality-wise, it's almost a genetic point. And I just wanted to share that with you. It's incredible to see this, and that is we have a very special community here, and I think that sailing tradition is very much a part of it. And of course, we're all sailing on to the future, and these discussions today are a form of pushing for the future and thinking about how we're going to make things better. Today we're going to talk about 3 strikes. Gosh, I have a little piece of advice for all of our students, and all y'all are young. As soon as you can, get married, have kids. Have 2 or 3 kids. Hopefully have kids by your late 20s, early 30s, and enjoy them. And I say that to everybody, and I've got to tell you, I'm saying that also to my gay and lesbian students. I have 7 sisters, 2 are lesbians. They're the best soccer moms you'll ever see. They're so organized. Absolutely. There's a lot of neat things in life that we have for stability, and family is the most important part of that stability. And also with your kids, spend time with them. If you love them, spend time with them. Don't give little kids tablets. Give them crayons and paper. Ask them to make art for you. And when they're a little bit older, when they learn how to write, get them to write stories for you. If we talk about Bloom's taxonomy of learning, the most basic is simple memorization. The highest level of learning is creativity. Inspire creativity in our young people. Novel practices are very good. That's what this conference is about, are novel practices. How can we get out of simply memorizing stuff? How can we get out of the rut that we're in by doing the same thing over and over and over again? We do it by becoming creative. And learning how to become creative is absolutely central to the policy process and also to the corrections process. We're dealing with a whole new generation of people in our society that are unlike any other group because of social media and technology and everything else. We need to adapt to it. We need to be aware of it. Gosh, spend time with your kids and listen to your kids. Absolutely. So why did I talk about marriage and family in a prison-related topic? Because the reality is marriage and families are a lot like prisons. And it's like, you want to know what living in a prison's like? Get married and have kids. Why? Because they're both total institutions. If you think about it, we call these things total institutions. You have to deal with food, shelter, clothing, health, safety. You deal with the same things with your families. You deal with the same things with your children all the time. And it's a very important analog to understanding some of the dynamics that we have to deal with in total environments, total institutions. The closest parallel that we have are the relationships we have with families. And of course, 99% of people, 98% of people especially, will never even experience a prison. And so I'm trying to help you to see just how heavy the burden of having a prison really is. A few years ago, I studied DUI on Guam, and Guam's demographic is 40, 30, 10, 10, 10. 40% Chamorros, 30% Filipinos, 10% U.S. mainlanders, 10% Asians other than Filipinos, and 10% Micronesian Islanders. You look at DUIs, normal statistics for all groups except for Filipinos and FSM residents. In those terms, they're exactly opposite. 30% of DUIs are FSM residents, only 10% of DUIs are Filipinos. And we studied, wow, what's going on with this difference here? Why does it happen? So we studied it. We studied it for 2 years. And what we found out was both Filipinos and FSM residents are core to our economy, absolutely, especially our FSM residents. They're very critical to our economy, and we can't undervalue that. But if you look at some of the dynamics, and there are a set of explanations for the FSM case that are very detailed, but I just want to share with you the Filipino part of the coin. What we looked at was that Filipinos, when they came here for economic reasons, and they wanted to support their families, of course, in the Philippines and other things, so they didn't want to screw that up with any kind of bad behavior. That's one thing. But even more so, why do Filipinos, and by the way, they drink just as much as everybody else. It's not a lower drinking rate. But why do Filipinos get arrested less for DUI on Guam? And we talked to focus groups over and over and over again about it. It's because they didn't want other Filipino people making fun of them. That's what kept them from offending. It's a social control. There's nothing more powerful than social control. Why do people go back to prison if they're in prison? Why do we have recidivism? It's because people hang out with the same people over and over again, and they're bad people. There's a whole social aspect to this, and on an island, it's a crucible of social dynamics that are really interesting to look at and to, of course, to study. If I had it my way, if we arrest a person from the FSM and they're from the FSM, don't put them in jail, send them back home, and let them wait out their process there. Why? Because prison will make them very bad. So if we can keep them out of prison and process them, of course process them, but don't keep them in the crucible of a jail, if we can really deal with that. Gosh, it's incredible to see what happens to people when they go to jail. So if we can then tell them, please don't offend again, they won't offend again if we can deal with the dynamics that put them in jail in the first place. And alcohol is a big part of that problem for all crime on Guam, not just that one. If we look at Article 4 of the U.S. Constitution, we could ask the federal government, we want to control residency here. We want to be able to kick people out of here or tell people they're not welcome. And we should do that for registered sex offenders and for violent felons from the U.S. mainland who want to come here. We could ask for that. We just never have. And it would be nice to tell people you're no longer welcome to live in our community and tell them and to get them out. We can be different. As a U.S. territory, we can be different. We had a security clearance here from 1945 to 1962 that let the Navy anyway keep people out of here. We can ask for that right too. The CNMI exercise that right. They effectively banish people. And when they banish people in the CNMI, where do they come? They come here. Okay, we got to fix that problem also. I love the Maricopa County model where you have barbed wire prison and tents. And I'm big about criticizing concrete block prisons. I think that there are far cheaper ways for us to do it. And also new novel types of policies like exile and banishment. And by the way, there are states that have exile and banishment policies. Texas has a great exile and banishment policy we could look at. You know, families are our jail and memories are our prison. We all live in the prison of memory. Okay, and I just wanted to share with you, if you have a loved one who's on drugs, that's a prison. You want to know what a prison feels like? That's a prison. You know, 1996, I came here, brought my little nephew, 10 years old with me. He went to Price Elementary. His name was Michael. Wonderful young man. He loved it. His mother was going to jail and his father was in jail. And so we took him in. My mom asked him. I was his legal guardian, took care of him. My wife, loved him. Absolutely loved him. My wife was like tiger mom even back then. When he would ever play his Nintendo, she would make him walk in place while he's playing Nintendo. Try that with your kids. Don't let them just sit around and do Xbox or whatever. Make them walk around while they're doing it. Very, very important point. But after a year, his parents got out of jail and they wanted the benefits of having a small child, and we ended up having to send them back. Broke our heart. Families break our hearts, and crime breaks our hearts. Biggest regret I ever had was having to send him back. You know, today I was thinking he'd be practicing in front of Judge Kwan today if he'd stayed here with us. It's a regret. We all live in a prison of the past. We got to get over it and move on. We got to move forward through making better policies. You know, why do we have a 3 strikes idea? Because there are bad, evil, violent people in this world. I'm serious, there are. Totally bad people. We need to keep them out of general society, no doubt. And don't believe that there are people that don't deserve to live in general society. There are people that don't deserve to live with us in general society. They're evil and bad. I'm on the school board. One of my most frustrating things that happened in the last few weeks was everybody saw a school teacher was accused in 2018, abusing little second graders, sexually abusing them. Nothing was done about it. In 2020, the Teacher Certification Commission recertified him as a school teacher, even though it was public knowledge that he'd done these things. Then in 2022, I guess he was arrested again, and then he was recently convicted. The average sex offender who abuses young girls will abuse 50 before they get caught. They'll abuse 150 boys before they get caught. This is an atrocious and invidious problem that we really need to look at. Over 20 years ago, I did a study for a law firm. They said, oh, study this. Tell us the victimology of this. How many victims are we talking about? And I said, well, I did the victimology statement, took about 2 weeks of data. It was 170 to 240. The law firm said, no way in the world. We're on an island. You can't have that many victims. Well, I guess today there's over 300 victims in that case. Yeah, there's a big problem, and we need to be serious and take particularly people who prey upon our children seriously. You want to know a 3 strikes law? I think 2 strikes or 1 strike in a lot of cases. That would work better because some people never change. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of neat and interesting and thoughtful things that are going to happen today. It's my honor and pleasure to seeing our young students put together events like this and having our esteemed guests here with us also. It's a total delight, and it's one of the great things I enjoy about being a professor. Nothing makes professors prouder than seeing our students do well. And so students, you did very well today, and thank you for asking me to give opening remarks.
Thank you, Dr. McNinch. From now on, I will call my wife my warden as well. So lastly, his name is legendary in our local and actually national law enforcement community. Please join me in welcoming Professor Yazaki to deliver his remarks.
Good morning. What a crowd, huh? So I want to congratulate the students. Over the years when you see the students who go through the freshman classes and every year you see improvement, and it culminates with this capstone course. And I'm proud of every single one of them. And kudos to Professor Ranagan. Where the heck is he? I guess he's sick. So great put together. He's always done a great packaging of these things. And I want to invite all of our guests and faculty and students who've been here, and please participate and ask questions. Thank you, Judge Kwan, Chief Ignacio, Director Bodadzu, and AG Moylan. Thank you for joining us. Three strikes, I have really mixed feelings about three strikes. I'm for it and I'm also against it, but I'm not going to comment because the panel should be talking about it. It started with Polly Klaas. Polly Klaas was a victim in Northern California. She got kidnapped from her bedroom by this really evil person, and she eventually, I think she was sexually assaulted or murdered. Some friends of mine in Northern California worked the case, and it was their career case, and I could never hear enough about it. But because of that emotion of losing Polly Klaas, there was a proposition in California, and the voters voted for three strikes. So the first version of three strikes was terrible because it didn't matter if it was a felony or a misdemeanor. It didn't matter if it was a serious felony. And so California state modified the law and made it for very, very serious offenses. Senator Brett McCready, when he first proposed it, I said, 2 strikes? Are you kidding? You know, most of the people in prison are just dumb people. They make bad decisions. And as Professor Ron McNinn says, there are some really evil, bad people in prison. And there's some really bad, evil people out there. They're the ones we need to put away for a long, long time. For the stupid ones, we need to find a way to get to them to help them make better decisions. It's about decisions and who you hang out with. And part of the prison, having served my year in prison, is you think I'm kidding? So I was in prison as well. Is that I learned so much more about the criminal justice system in prison. Because before I became director, I had spent my whole career making cases, collecting evidence, interviewing people, putting cases together, testifying, and making sure these people got convicted. I had no concern after they got convicted and locked up. When I became director of corrections, it gave me a wake-up call. It really was hey, what do we do with these people? And it remains a challenge today. What do we do with these people? And can we afford to keep rounding them up and putting them in a warehouse? Because our prisons become a warehouse. And if you ever get to visit the prison, it is depressing to see 6 or 7 people in one cell. That's how bad prison conditions are. So I'm okay with long-term punishment for bad people, really evil bad people, but I'm also concerned about preventing crime and rehabilitation. And recidivism is terrible. America has done a terrible job with recidivism. We haven't figured it out. And I think somebody said insanity is doing the same thing and trying to get different results. So we've been doing the same thing, we're getting terrible results. So I think aside from talking about 3 strikes and how to deal with these bad people, we also should think about how do we find solutions for reducing recidivism. So I challenge the audience, please think about that. Let's find a solution for reducing recidivism. Because locking them up and throwing away the key, is that a solution, or do we create an institution where people perfect their skill form? They get a PhD in crime, and they become worse than when they came into prison. So those are really concerning for me. Anyway, congratulations, everybody. Let's have a beautiful forum. Have a great day.
Thank you, Professor Ishizaki. Before we begin our panel discussion, we would like to take a moment to acknowledge Professor Uggen, who is present over there. He's been under the weather recently, but he's here today. Without him, without his guidance, we wouldn't be here today. Also, one of the clubs in the university, PALS Club, they've been very helpful with us. Thank you all once again for joining us in today's forum. We will now begin with the introduction of our panelists. As I introduce your name, just please take your seat. Chief of Police Stephen Ignacio. Senator Therese Terlahi of the 38th Guam Legislature. Attorney General Douglas B. Moylan. Director Fred Bordallo of the Department of Corrections. Executive Director Stephen Hattori, Public Defender Services Corporation. And lastly, we have Magistrate Judge Jonathan Kwan from Judiciary of Guam. We will now give each panelist about 2 minutes for their introduction, starting with Stephen Hattori.
Okay, first I want to thank you for inviting me. These events seem to get bigger and better every year. You guys should all get A's with this panel. Anyways, I'm the current executive director of the Public Defender Service Corporation. We represent the fathers and the mothers, the brothers, sisters, the sons, daughters, the husbands and wives who are charged with criminal offenses. And just like everyone here, we're just as opposed to crime as everyone else. And I think because we help our clients in a different way than, the AG's office and the Department of Corrections, we have a lot of suggestions on improving the system. And I really appreciate this forum and this opportunity to share some of these ideas to really prevent future crime, which requires more than just locking people up. It requires a lot more than that. And I think Guam, we have a lot of resources out there. We just need a lot more of them. And I think we're, collectively, we all work together, right? We have the Opioid Recovery Council that's chaired by the AG. That provides a lot of funding for drug treatment programs. And so we work collaboratively to try to make Guam a safer place for everyone. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I look forward to providing some input on these very important questions that you guys have presented. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Steve Ignacio, your Chief of Police, and I've been with the Guam Police Department for over 38 years. I am a proud alumni of the University of Guam, both with my bachelor's and master's degree in public administration. So it's always good to come back and be here amongst the students and future leaders of our island. I was at UOG last week again for another forum. I'm trying to remember the name. I can't believe I can't remember last week. That's how busy it gets at the Guam Police Department. And for those of you who don't know what you're going to do with your criminal justice or public admin degree, when you're done here, the Guam Police Department has many openings. Please come and join the Guam Police Department. Yeah. But I'd like to thank this class for bringing up this topic of the three strikes law. As I was sitting here prior to the beginning of the forum, I was talking to Mr. Hattori and Judge Kwan, and we can't think of and even Speaker Terlai, we can't think of a recent case since this law was passed where somebody was sentenced under the three strikes law. So it's a law that probably hasn't been used since its inception. And so this is a great forum really to bring that conversation back to light. I'm a little bit like Chief Ishizaki. I believe that, bad people, bad criminals need to be punished, need to be put in jail. But we also need to look at who we're putting in jail, and should we continue to put people in jail that maybe need a chance at rehabilitation instead of confinement. So this is a great forum to discuss that, and hopefully bring some ideas to light that maybe can help our policymakers and people that make decisions as to what to do with people that get arrested. Thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to this forum.
Good morning. My name is Magistrate Judge Jonathan Kwan. I'm a sitting magistrate judge for the Superior Court of Guam. Before that, I was a prosecutor for over 12 years at the AG's office, senior prosecutor, one of the supervisors, the trainer, the primary trainer for the new prosecutors for over a decade. Before that, I also was a criminal defense counsel and a corporate counsel. And then I had the privilege to serve as the Guam Police Department legal counsel for 2 years. I had been a professor for the Guam Community College, Criminal Justice Division for 5 years, where I was a primary instructor for the Basic Law Enforcement Academy. I got to train about 8 cycles of GPD, which was also a privilege to do so. I currently am a major in the United States Army Trial Defense Service. I'm one of the Judge Advocate Generals. And I've been on the bench for 7 years, working and watching all of this. So before I pass it on, I need to let you understand that I don't just handle the criminal matters. I also handle small claims, master collections calendars, restitution court, amongst other things. But I mention those specifically because they impact and they tie in to the criminal cases. So I often see the same defendants in 2, 3, or 4 different cases in different capacities. So I'm getting a bigger picture than just the criminal side of it. I'm seeing also the debt side. I'm seeing also the family struggle side. I cover the juvenile docket as well. On occasion, I see the families in there. I'm also seeing the divorces because I handle the divorces. So I'm seeing the divorces. So I'm seeing pieces of the person's life scattered throughout different parts of the court. So I'm hope I can provide some of this perspective to you that isn't just in the criminal context, because a person's life is scattered throughout different parts of society. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and it's a privilege to do so. Thank you.
Half a day, everyone, and thank you to the class who put this forum on for us and giving us the opportunity to weigh in from different angles of our criminal justice system. So it's a very big question, the criminal justice system. So I'm Therese Terlahi. I'm a former speaker, current senator of the Guam legislature. I was, before that, counsel to the Guam legislature and also a professor here, assistant professor for 7 years. And I've been a senator now over 8 years, going on 9 years. Never intended to be that long. But the reason I ran for office is because of some of the questions that we're looking at today. Our society, we have such complex issues. We don't seem to be solving them immediately. And we have to all work together and from every angle solve this. In criminal justice, we have to take care and make sure that we have enough police officers on the streets. And we have tried to do that. And I think put in cycle after cycle in the last few years, additional cycles that had not been done in maybe a decade before that. We have tried to ensure that the AG's office has prosecutors, can attract prosecutors, can keep prosecutors, because without prosecutors, our criminal justice system is going to just not move. We've tried to ensure that we can get social workers, very, very needed, critical social workers that we have an extreme shortage of right now. And we're partnering with UOG to help us ensure that we can get social workers to help people before they enter the criminal justice system when they are struggling. We have vetted judges and magistrates, make sure that what is their philosophy, how are they going to treat these crimes, how are they going to follow the law? Because a lot of the law in criminal justice relies on what is the risk of releasing this person, what is the risk to the public? And that is, we are completely relying on them to make those assessments. We are relying on the court system in general to do its statistics, to research different assessment tools, to know a history of a person, to use every tool available to it to assess what is the risk of releasing this person to the other members of the public. That's the number one consideration. We are trying to make sure there's also a retention election for judges that we've kept in place. There's a probation and parole resources and tools that we are trying to mandate and ensure that they have enough so that if they are released on probation or parole or up for parole, it's one of the laws that we passed to make sure that the parole board is going to be able to look at every risk assessment done on this person and every risk to the public that release of this person on parole is going to impose. We, of course, have to battle the importation of drugs. That's huge. We have to continue to push and push for inspections at our ports, inspections at our airport, increase inspections so that the drugs don't flow freely in our community and the crime, and to prevent the crime. We've done this through the Opioid Council. We've tried to also assist in other ways, and through job training and education. So education is a critical component. We cannot ignore that if they're coming out of our high schools not equipped for jobs, not equipped to succeed, then we've all failed. So we have to continue to keep pushing that. And remember always, when we're considering these policies for sentencing and imprisonment, what purpose is it going to solve in prevention? Is it going to prevent crime? Are people going to be afraid of being imprisoned or not? Are they going to be rehabilitated when they're in there, or are they not? And we are coming to learn that in Guam, the reality is, in many cases, they are not. And that's a reality, kind of the different than the ideal, function of a prison, unfortunately. And of course, punishment. And of course, justice for victims, which we have tried to focus on as well, including victims' rights, including compensation for victims, even without adjudication of the crime. Victims are the ones who are calling for stricter penalties. So we have, in fact, enabled a commission for the courts to, through the court system, they've brought in a commission. We've funded this for 4 years now for them to review all of our criminal laws, our statutes, our penalties, and make recommendations. And we're awaiting those. So again, I think that under the overwhelming principle here is release safe for the public. And if not, I think the laws enable you to protect the public. They enable every one of us here to protect the public, and we have to do that, number one. Good
morning, Hafaday. I'm the Director of Corrections. My name is Fred Berdalio. I also have a valuable employee, Major Anton Uggan, who has a lot of institutional knowledge because he's worked at the Major Uggan has worked at the Department of Corrections for 30 years. I've worked as the former chief of police, and I spent my time at the Guam Police Department for over 29 years, retired as chief of police. And I've also been in the military and corrections in the Marines back in '78 for 5 years in the correctional system for the military, which is an excellent model because we've heard this term between jail and a prison, right? And the study, the population you're looking at when it comes to recidivism and the 3 strikes laws are individuals in a prison serving in a penitentiary, those that are serving sentences. And then people have mentioned jail. A jail is not the same as a prison or a penitentiary. A jail is where you have your pretrial in detainees awaiting for their day in court. That's a different population. My education not only has it been, I like to thank the University of Guam because I was a product of the University of Guam for my schooling, both my bachelor's and master's in public administration. And then also I have a graduate education from the University of Oklahoma in human relations, and then also Homeland Security at the Naval Postgraduate School. And corrections facilities have been deemed critical infrastructures. So it's fitting also that as we come into the discussion, we look at the potential, of course, there's fears within the community about the threats of individuals who come before the criminal justice system and why they repeat offenders. That's where I'll give my perspective from the human relations aspect of it with my graduate studies. Because in the human relations aspect of it, sometimes it's not so simple to say, well, we came up with the word 3 strikes. Why not 5 strikes? Why not 2 strikes? Why not 1? Where do you even come up with a number? to say that would be, you're gonna quantify it. You can't quantify something that is so complex, so why individuals want to commit crimes. In my time where I was at Department of Corrections in August 23, it's not my first time up there, because when we first came in the Guam Police Department, I was assigned to the detention, the Agania lockup. We took care of the pretrial. These days, that's not happening. The Department of Corrections handles both the pretrial and the convicted offenders up there. That's fighting a two-front war, and I've said that publicly, right? To manage the population of pretrial detainees, over 200, some of them up there in Manila, with sentenced prisoners. You can't run a rehabilitation program when you have pretrial offenders up there waiting their day in court. This island has to come to, you as the future leaders of Guam will have to come to this sort of decision. Is it feasible to keep them all in the same place up there in Manila? Or are there times to, as like Attorney General has mentioned, can we expand confinement? Can you expand confinement spaces, or holding places, right? And could other law enforcement agencies be involved with that? And I've submitted a report on that, and I've shared it with former Chief Frank Zazaki on that. If you're interested in reading that 71-page report, you can see Zazaki, and he can share some of my thoughts that, because he gave me some historical things, how the Department of Corrections ended up holding both pretrial and sentenced offenders. And with that, again, I'd just like to thank the University of Guam and the students here, graduate students, for the opportunity, and I will share some of my thoughts when it comes down to three strikes law. Thank you.
Hafaday. My name's Douglas Moylan. I'm a public servant, first of all. I'm elected by you, which has a unique role in our leadership of this government. Who am I and what can I do for you is my approach today. I was the first elected Attorney General in 2003. I'm now the 6th elected Attorney General as of 2023. It's been an honor to serve the people, and I say that to you especially because I was educated as an attorney by the government of Guam, the people of Guam, and the University of Guam under a Protect scholarship. I am a 33-year attorney on Guam now. I've seen and served in all 3 branches of the government in my 33-year career as an attorney. But that is who I am. What can I do for you is the most important thing to everybody that's sitting in the audience today. The Attorney General is the Chief Legal Officer of the government of Guam, and that covers a lot of the civil roles that I have. But unlike just the Chief Legal Officer, I am the Chief Law Enforcement Officer. And I am is because of you. You are the people that select an Attorney General every 4 years. My vision of what the Attorney General is, now being 33 years and the youngest Attorney General, now at 59 years old, the 6th elected Attorney General, is what we do in the Attorney General's office, improving the quality of life on Guam. That is the critical question that I think every government official should ask themselves. And then as an Attorney General, I am an attorney. I am the people's attorney. You are my client. An Attorney General always has to remember an attorney serves the client's legal interest, period. I don't care if you're a government attorney or you're a private attorney. But unlike the private attorneys, there's only one attorney in most jurisdictions that can prosecute crimes, and it is called the Attorney General or the District Attorney. Guam has a problem, and the 2 biggest problems that I see now in this 6th elected Attorney General reiteration: repeat criminals and meth addicts. You can't fix a meth addict. They will hurt you, they will kill you, they will kill people around them. The 2 subjects that we're going to talk about today, I labeled it. The Korean tourist that came here, retired from his family and died, and the Valentine's Day murder. Meth addicts. There's no way to fix these guys, and the best way to do it is put them at DOC. Lock them up, not because we want to punish them, but because we want to be safe out there. Public safety, healthcare, and education. You hear every politician speak about that during the election. Without public safety, you don't have a society. You take public safety away from anybody, why have a society? Why elect leaders? You will be dead or be suffering because of a criminal hurting you. That is how I see the Attorney General's office. My role is Chief Legal Officer to protect you, law-abiding citizens, not to protect the criminals. That's other people's job. That's the governor, that's the legislature, and that's with respect that I say that. But when you have an attorney, you want the toughest, meanest attorney going into court for you to win your cases. You don't want some attorney that's going to go in there and hold the other side's hand. You want to put them behind bars because at the end of the day, they're going to protect you. And just to wrap this up, in sentencing, safety, punishment, restitution, deterrence, and rehabilitation. Those are the 5 categories in which the courts consider passing sentence. Thank you.
We will now begin with our questions. Question number 1. With the murder of a Korean tourist in Tumon and a mother of 3 outside a restaurant in Tamuning, stemming from repeat offenders with drug cases, do you think the current approach of compassionate justice and treatment court is working? This question is we're going to start with AG Moylan and then Chief Ignacio.
Okay, so in the 3 years that I've been in office, the greatest problems, as I said, are the repeat criminals and the meth addicts, especially the meth addicts. Meth addicts have a drug that was developed by the Germans back in World War II to create the super soldier. It was called Preventin at that time. And you know the Germans, they're very good at what they do. They realized that when they were giving their soldiers that methamphetamine, Preventin, they were creating addicts. Strong, able to work more than 48 hours, but then they became highly addicted to the substance. And it is not a natural substance. This is a substance that has been regenerated to even make it more addictive to the brain. That's why you're hearing about all these recidivism programs. Ask the adult drug court. Do a study. What is the recidivism rate of the adult drug court? They're not publishing it right now. Last time they did it, I think, was in 1997. What is the percentage of people that are going through a rehabilitative program and actually coming out successful when you're dealing with meth? I want to tell you, seeing it, the records in the AG's office, it's very low. So again, what do? You need to lock them up and keep them away from society, keep them away from the rest of us so they're not eventually killing us. And that is what the Korean tourist murder and the Valentine's Day murder. And one tidbit, the guy that killed the Korean tourist, he was like the rest of us, but he took that drug. I have compassion. What was it about that man that shot the Korean tourist in the gut who died about 7 hours later? What did he do when the police came up on him? He put the gun to his head and he shot himself. That is not a cold-blooded murderer. That is a person who was struggling with drugs, and I personally pulled the file. He was an adult drug court candidate, as well as the Valentine's Day murder. These are people in our society, our friends, brothers, sisters, and relatives who are getting addicted to meth and are ending up being animals once they're on meth, and very low ability to rehabilitate themselves, but they still have consciences, and that's why I say, that's why he shot himself. He knew that he put himself in a situation that he was gonna not be able to recover from. And Governor of Guam, lock that port down. Why isn't she going through every container in that port? This is an island. There's only 2 ways you're gonna get on here. Through the ocean or in a plane. We already know that it's not coming through the planes in the quantity that's keeping the price down. It's the Port Authority of Guam and over the oceans, where the Chinese boats are meeting up probably with these fishing boats, and they're not monitoring the ports coming in the south. Governor of Guam has the ability to shut it down, inspect every cargo coming out of that port. Use the dogs that the Opioid Council authorized in 2023. 18 canines. Why did it take the customs over 2 years to get those dogs? Something is going on, and the governor of Guam is responsible for our safety, is responsible for ensuring that the National Guard goes and monitors those oceans out there at night on those boats coming in the south that are going past customs through those little ports that they're pushing off the fishing boats. She's been given the opportunity to fix it, and she refuses not to. Then you're seeing the rest of her cabinet getting indicted over there. Rosalind, DOC implication for drugs, running the marina down there. Are you kidding me? Her administration is corrupt. And what it's doing is it's killing us because she's letting in that type of drug to this island. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning. As General, as a member of the cabinet, sir, I would likely want to say that I'm not corrupt. Yeah. So I want to make sure that you know that I'm not corrupt because I'm a member of this cabinet. So, you know, whoever.
The governor's corrupt, Mr.
Okay. Just, I want to make sure that I'm not being labeled as corrupt because I am definitely not a corrupt person. But, you know, we go back and look at the Tai Tai murders and the Korean tourist murders. I think what we see in some of the offenders, and especially offenders in these type of cases, is escalation, right? They start off small, committing small crimes, theft, maybe some a burglary here or there, home invasion, and then they may elevate to other more severe crimes like robbery. And in this case, in both cases, what we were seeing was the underlying motive for the crime was robbery. And so unfortunately, as a result of the robbery, they chose to also kill a human being in the process of committing a robbery. And so that's what we're seeing. And I agree with the AG's office. When we're dealing with violent felony criminal offenders, yes, they need to be confined. Yes, they need to be incarcerated. And yes, if they need to, then they need to spend the rest of their life in jail because we do not need these kinds of people, felony, dangerous criminals out on our streets. At the same token, though, I have seen and met and know some of these rehabilitated drug offenders. So I don't know what the numbers are and I don't know what works and who's coming out, but I think we need to look at the offender and see if there's a chance that maybe this person is willing to go through rehabilitation, is willing to take that class, is willing to go to those courses, is willing to go to Salvation Army or Oasis Empowerment Center and clean themselves up. And there have been some very successful stories in the people in the community, and they've come out and talked about their story. So I think we need to also make sure that dangerous felony criminal offenders need to stay in jail. Those who maybe are a first-time drug offender, maybe and they're willing to change their life. We see a lot of successful stories even coming out of the federal district court of people who have been convicted but have turned their life around. So, there's no really one approach to everything. And so we just need to maybe look at the offender and whether or not this offender has that opportunity to be rehabilitated. But yes, let's keep dangerous felony criminals in jail where they deserve to be.
Okay. Thank you. Fortunately, I don't have to run for elected office, so I can be factual in my statements to you guys, all right? And I want to draw upon the stats that the court produces, that the Department of Correction produces, and that, even GPD produces. If you guys look at the Uniform Crime Reports or the CCRs, you'll see interesting trends. But let me tell you what the court stats show. The court stats show, we know that drug really is the biggest problem, right? So what do you think the next biggest case is? Like burglary, right? Everyone assumes burglary's rampant, out of control. Let me give you the stats on that. In 2022, there were 105 burglary charges. 2022. In 2024, how many do you think it went up? How many of you think it went down? Right? Okay, 2024, it dropped to 89. And so during the same period, possession went from 223 to 402. So we know more people are using meth, but they're not necessarily committing serious crimes, right? They have an addiction. We have programs out there that are treating them. And just because you're addicted to meth doesn't mean you're an animal. Doesn't mean you should be locked up, 6 man in a cell, sleeping on, they're not even sleeping on mattresses. They're sleeping on bed frames. So when DOC says we got 400 beds or 300 beds, they mean frames. These guys are not sleeping on mattresses. I talked to one guy who was in about a month ago. They gave him a single blanket, no pillow. He had to wrap his Zoris up with the blanket. He laid on the floor, feet up against the urinal, because he was in a cell with 6 people. Hopefully, he didn't get peed on when a cellmate had to use the urinal in the middle of the night. But it's really not pretty, and it's really inhumane. I mean, if Gain held dogs above their, cell limit or their cage limit, I'm pretty sure they would get shut down. All right, thank you.
Would anybody else like to answer for 2 minutes?
I just want to say, thanks, General Moylan, for your opinion on the governor. But, I just want to say, my mom, when she was director of nurses, worked with Governor Lou Longuero. She was a nurse herself. When you're in the practice and the business of nursing, you're in the practice of saving lives. And one of the biggest things of that oath of saving lives, of course, is going to be addressing what's a threat to the lives of our community. Certainly, substance abuse is a big threat, right? We're very resilient as a community. We overcame the 60s or the 70s of the heroin days. We could beat this situation. And my proposal, I'm saying, is more of the focus on expanding drug treatment opportunities. The Lighthouse Recovery Office is one model there. We need more of that drug treatment, because the three-legged stool, when it comes down to threats of drugs, is enforcement. It's also drug treatment and education. We're doing the education right here. Let's do the drug treatment, right? That will make a big difference too.
If I could comment, or actually ask a question, actually. So factual accuracy is absolutely essential to ensure the proper response to an issue. You can't make a decision on how to solve a problem if your facts are wrong. Assumptions can lead to innocent people being hurt or blamed, improper policies and laws being passed or implemented that will not solve the problem. As a judicial officer, I am bound by certain rules. One of them is that I cannot comment on current cases pending before the court. The 2 cases that are mentioned right now put me at a disadvantage because I cannot mention, they're currently before the courts now, so I cannot comment on them. But I want to ask a question. Has anyone actually checked if the people involved, who are allegedly involved in the 2 cases, are actually, quote, repeat offenders with drug cases? Do a majority have prior convictions? Does any more than one have prior drug convictions? Attorney General Moylan's office does a good job of filing pretrial requests for confinements with every case that he files. In it, he includes any and all arrests, active cases, and convictions. Has anyone pulled those public records and actually looked at them? Before we make assumptions, I encourage you to look at the public records. Thank you.
We will now move forward to our next question. This question is for Judge Kwan and Chief Ignacio. What is the purpose of personal recognizance bond and how does it work? Do you believe the judiciary of Guam should require defendants to post the personal recognizance bond amount before being released again once they are rearrested for violating release conditions set during the magistrate hearing? Judge Kwan.
The question is not phrased accurately. The proper terms are not used, but if I understand the question, let me explain this way. Once a person is brought before the court at the magistrate's hearing, there are 5 possible outcomes. 1, a release on own recognizance with conditions. 2, a personal recognizance bond, unsecured with conditions. 3, personal recognizance bond secured with conditions. 4, cash bail requirement. Or 5, release from confinement due to dismissals of the case without prejudice. Those are generally the 5 possible outcomes that happen if somebody comes before the court at the hearing. Now, if I understand the question correctly, a person is charged with an offense, is released, personal recognizance bond unsecured. A person is charged with an offense if released from custody without having to post cash or property up front on the strength of their promise to comply with the conditions of release. If the defendant fails to appear or violates the conditions, the amount promised may be required to be paid, and the defendant shall be returned to custody. That's the textbook definition. Here is what you have to take into account. The legislature is the representative of the people. They decide what the people want, and they create the laws based on the preference of the people. The executive branch, the governor's office, in conjunction with Mr. A.G. Moylan's office, enforces the law. The court is bound to interpret it. As the senator and former speaker indicated, we are pledged to interpret the law and follow it as they have created, and we do our duty. If you look at the code on the laws that were created by the people through the representatives, Title 9 HGC 4010, 4015, I'll read to you specifically, 4010. Release on bail generally permitted. The statute says this: at his first appearance before a judge of the Superior Court, every person charged with an offense shall be ordered released pending trial in the matter and subject to the conditions provided by 4015 and 4020. The operative language they included in the statute is shall. 4015, the judge shall order the person charged to be released on recognizance unless the judge can determine on the basis of available information that such release will not reasonably assure the appearance of the person as required or will endanger the safety of other persons or the community. You cannot solely use the alleged offense because the person is innocent until proven guilty. So I must, and they must prove to the court other factors and point to other factors that we can assert, okay, you're a danger based on prior conduct or other factors, or there are risks for non-appearance. And if they can't, then the statute is clear. I shall release. That is what the statute says. They can change the law. It's their decision. We will comply. But if they change it to may, right now, there are 983, correct me, Chief, if I'm wrong, 983 defendants in the Department of Corrections at $118 a day. Department of Corrections budget last fiscal year was $36,200,000. If all 1,700 that are on pretrial right now are committed at $118 a day, that would mean an additional $54 million in confinement costs. We will comply. Now, as a sitting magistrate, I do not take the confinement amounts into determination. But that's the reality. The legislature must decide, and the court will comply and interpret. That's the role that we each have. Thank you.
So with respect to personal recognizance bond and my opinion of it, again, the job of the Guam Police Department is not to get involved with personal recognizance bond. We do know sometimes when we do pull over, and sometimes this is the frustration that's shared by the community and the police officers, right? Is we sometimes continue to see the same people cycle through the jails and through the Guam Police Department. They're getting arrested multiple times for possession. They're getting arrested multiple times for possession, sometimes criminal trespass, burglary, theft. And so we get to see these people who have repeat offenses. And just like the community, we ask, well, why are they out again? And why are they out committing more crime or committing crime again? But it's not the job of the Guam Police Department to determine who gets to stay and who gets to get released. Of course, that determination is made every morning by the Attorney General and his staff at the prosecutor's office. They look at cases that we make arrest on, and they make decisions on whether or not this person will spend the night in jail again, or of course they have to come before a magistrate hearing. But it's up to the Attorney General and his staff to determine, who gets to stay in jail or who they're going to advocate to keep in jail longer. But the Attorney General, since he's come in, he's had a tough on crime approach, and so that does help the Guam Police Department because it keeps some of our more violent offenders off the street. So thank you very much.
I just want to,
Can we give Senator Terlahi a chance to?
Yeah, it's not my question, but I just, you were able to respond for a couple minutes. Yes, so, yes, the statute says you're going to release them unless the courts find or are not able to say that there is no harm to the public. And I think that is really where we're seeing the gap, is we can't determine that. Every case is different. The courts have to determine that. They have to look, and the statutes list a whole list of information that they should have available to them in order to make that determination. We've also authorized them to use risk assessment tools to determine whether a person is going to be a risk upon release. We know that without rehabilitation, certain types of persons are going to be a risk on release. And so we've gone through the system of justice where the courts have discretion. They're supposed to look at the person who's in front of them and all of the conditions of their history, their history with crime, their history and the nature of the crime that they're being accused of, and really make a determination of whether they are a risk to the community. And if they are not supposed to be released. And that's what we want from the court system, is to make that determination, to make it as accurately as possible, because that's what we're seeing. In this time between sending them to drug court for rehabilitation because of addiction, they're being released. We know they're a threat if they are addicted. We're in the time or based on circumstances, they're being released when they have a history of crime. That's why the public is so frustrated. And so I still think the courts should have some discretion, but they have to be able, we have to hold them accountable for making that determination as to whether people are a risk or not.
okay, thank you. I actually believe the court's doing a pretty good job, and their numbers support that. In 2024, according to their annual report, they didn't release everybody. In fact, only 73% of the people charged with crimes were released. And of the people, the 1,394 people who were, 1,508 were released pre-trial in 2024. 92% of them didn't commit another crime. And so one position is we should just hold everybody till their case is resolved. We've seen those couple people in the last year charged with homicide, and they were confined. They were found not guilty. They spent months, if not over a year in jail, awaiting the trial. And so from the court stats, we know that 92.4% of the individuals released do not commit new offenses. And I think that's a pretty good rate. The court also applies, risk assessment tool that's been, I believe, largely successful, as well as electronic monitoring, which has a 97.6% success rate. So if you're on EM, you're not likely to commit a new offense. And those are the actual numbers released by the judiciary. Thank you.
I just want to, I appreciate Judge Kwan for, elaborating on some of the cost, Department of Corrections, when you have individuals confined. Because if you have an individual in pretrial who maybe robbed a store, maybe about, $700 in damage, right, or something like that, and then all of a sudden they come into our facility, the next thing you know, they got to go to the hospital, because all of a sudden they had an underlying ailment. That's cost to the taxpayers. And there was an individual who had cancer, and those treatments cost the taxpayers up to $20-some thousand. And that's a cost. So there is going to be a cost that's associated when you have an increasing number of inmates, both pretrial and sentence in there. Those medical bills are paid by the taxpayers, not paid by the inmates.
Sure.
General?
The national discussion right now is no more cashless bails from jurisdictions that are fed up with repeat offenders. My staff has put together these two binders that you see up here. Every month we issue a catch, release, and reoffend report. The month of September, 157 in a 30-day period of the people that were put on pre-trial release violated the judge's order. And by the way, Judge Kwan is one of the toughest judges I've seen on the bench. And every time that we go before him, the reports that I get by daily show that this man is looking at the criminals and putting the ones that should be behind bars, and releasing those that maybe should be given that opportunity. But in 157 people that were given a release order in 30 days, 157 were violated by the probation office. And this is the more important statistic. 14 of those people that were violated ended up in a new crime. How can you expect to manage a criminal justice system when the guys you're releasing are causing more crime? You're doubling the numbers. Feel free to go to our website. It's very scary what you're seeing in these release reports.
We will now move forward to our third question. This question is for Director Badallo and Director Hattori. Do you believe the court should have a stricter requirement in completing plea deal agreements instead of giving numerous extra chances by extending probationary periods to give defendants more time to complete conditions such as treatment classes and community service? We'll start with Director Badallo.
Thank you. I believe that I have confidence in the judiciary, and I believe that one of the aspects, or one of the issues where really it's pointing to, and about maybe recidivism or the pretrial release suddenly committing another crime, is how aggressive the community supervision is taking place. At the court, you got the probation office. With the Department of Corrections, we have our parole office. I'm always keeping track of the parole violations, and I'm sure the chief probation officer's keeping track of the probation violations and how we can reduce probation violations, how we can reduce parole violations. But my confidence I have is with the judiciary. Each of these judges, like Judge Kwan, he just finished describing the kind of job he has, from juvenile to different kind of decisions he has to make that affects the lives of individuals, each person he sees. Recently, the media can portray this guy who I think he's 29 years old or 30 years old who robbed the gas station, and that's a violent. But when I took a look at that person's profile, young guy, young person, unemployed, single, started off with actual property crimes, and substance abuse. Now he's graduated toward a violent crime of robbery. What's next? You know, when they come over to the Department of Corrections and they're in a combined jail and prison because they're mixed with these two different kind of inmate classes, they can come out more violent. They can come out, and that's the harm to the community. And that's a solution. We hope each of the graduate students here, when they do their research or continued research into this issue of are they graduating to more violent crimes? Because what kind of particular approach are we using in terms of, do you think by leaving them or locking up behind bars in corrections, the philosophy in the military corrections, it's the punishment alone is just being confined, losing your freedom. I mean, think about it when your parents told you go to your bedroom, right, and stay there, and they're punishing you, right? That's a form of, okay, you can't do what you wanted to do. But we're talking about, we found some pretrial that were there held without their day in court up to 2 years. That starts to get into some constitutional issues. There are some improvements we really need to make. But my confidence is still with the judiciary, because I believe, and maybe I'm a little bit biased, I'll just say it. I live with a family of lawyers. I have a brother who's a judge, but I trust in the judicial. It's not the perfect system, American system of justice, but I think it's the best in the world. Thank you.
Okay, I mean, I think the question assumes that their requirements are currently not strict, and that's really not the case. If you look at the AG's own report, right, if you don't check in once a week, a violation report is filed. If you don't call in once a week, if you're ordered to, then a violation report is filed. And then certain sanctions are enforced. In fact, I challenge everyone to go through the catch and release report and figure out how many of those sanctions are for things like not having a car so you can't physically drive in to check in, or you don't have an ID so you can't sign up for services and drug treatment. So before you can go to New Beginnings or Lighthouse, you have to get a Guam ID. And if you've never had a Guam ID, oh, believe me, I challenge all the students to go try to get a Guam ID with no money. All right, good luck. You need a birth certificate, you need a social security card, get you a temporary Guam ID, and all the money in between, whether it's police clearance, court clearance, AG clearance, that's like $100 worth of clearances for someone without a job. So anyways, I don't think it's very lenient right now. In fact, if you look at the actual statistics, that we've incarcerated more people or sentenced either through plea agreements, through trial, or through revocations of probation, which are happening at historic rates. People are on probation who haven't completed their terms are being revoked at historic rates. Let me give you an example. In 2019, there were 220 sentenced local inmates. Just November 10th, I ran the head count. There were 399 sentenced local inmates. That's 179 extra sentenced local inmates. So the courts are pretty strict when it comes to enforcing probation. When do they cut you slack? If you're trying. If you're in treatment, they will give you extended time, and that makes sense, right? Because it's really hard to get into treatment, right? I mean, drug court it's a 1-year probation, and so it's very tight, right? Like if you fall off the wagon, it's hard to get back on. Probation for typical drug cases are like, they're 5 years, but oftentimes, maybe they need additional supervision. But once they complete the treatment, and as long as they're going 5 years without committing a new offense, then, the judges will give them a break, or will say like finish up, or they'll revoke them and say, if you don't complete everything by a certain date, then you're going to get revoked. And you really have to look at a lot of these revocations are like, you know what the fine is for possession of a straw without any meth in there other than residue? You guys know what that is? That's $5,000. Like, who has $5,000, right? I mean, that's like a ridiculously high fine, and it really sets people up for failure. So a lot of times judges who have a heart and who recognize that people are trying, give people extensions, and even the extensions are limited. So I disagree with the question. I don't think the courts are excessively lenient. I think they're a little harsher than they've been in the past. And I think they do a very good job of listening to both sides and determining whether or not someone should be revoked. And so that's all I have to add about that. Thank you.
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. I think that the actual evidence, the statistics of this type of revocation of probation or pretrial release, those statistics should be known by everyone. We should have them at the tips of our fingers, because that's really going to tell us. And we are hearing two sides of this story right now. But I completely support, if they are not complying with the terms of their probation, that probation be revoked. And I'm glad, if it's correct, that the judiciary is doing that for the most part, but we do have some cases where they're not. And I think those should be studied and see, what is it? What is the trend? What are they relying on that's allowing them to extend probation when that's not warranted? Some of these issues, because they've been brought to our attention by the judiciary, we've been able to help, at least with bus passes for many of those people who do not have transportation. I understand that's one of the number one reasons that they're not able to comply with probation, the check-ins and the going to counseling, different things. Also, we've massively increased money for the drug rehabilitation. We have to fight for this every year. Unfortunately, it's not automatic. It's not put into the budget requests. And we have to, on the floor, when we're in budget, find ways to find extra money and fight for that. And that puzzles me, because that should be something that the entire community is yelling for, because without that, everybody, there will be no drug rehabilitation. So we're short on it. We need more resources to it, and we need everybody's help to make sure that everybody agrees that we are going to put resources towards drug rehabilitation. And the other thing that we've done, hopefully, is going to assist this as well, is, in addition to education, we passed a law to mandate that 18-year-olds are going to go get an ID. So our law allows them to get this for free when they turn 18. It allows the schools to facilitate that in the schools or over at DMV. But because that is very, very important, and that's going to set them up, hopefully, for a different life. Thank you.
Okay, so a plea agreement is a contract, okay? That's basic Supreme Court of Guam situation. You make a contract with the people of Guam, all of you. That contract says that you do these things and your case is going to get closed, okay? Some people get their records cleaned. They call it expungement. What do you do when the boat is swamped? I think everybody in this room has to step back a moment. We've got three competing interests on Guam, and if Senator Duenas was here, he would tell you, and I see the senators that are here today, does this community have money growing on trees right now? We don't. We even had to do $12 million, I think, just to pay the SNAP benefits because of what was going on in D.C. We don't have the money to be spending all this resources and taking it away from healthcare, the new hospital, to fixing the hospital, education. Two schools are closed now. Anyone that's in JFK is getting half an education in Ukudu. We don't have the resources on a swamp boat to be listening to excuses. That's all I'm hearing right now. When I hear a defense attorney talk, oh, please, 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 my guy didn't have a car to get to that drug checkup on probation. He just, didn't have an ID. We don't care as the people of Guam. You're like when you get scolded by your parents. You're put on probation and you better not act up or you're going to get it, right? New billboard, right? The point is that do we have the money to pay for more lawyers, more counselors, more probation officers, more judges, more defense attorneys? No, we don't. They're already nickel and diming the private defense attorneys, asking them to do more with less in an environment when Guam does not have enough lawyers. We don't have enough lawyers who are the administrators of the system. I can tell you this right now. Most of my office is all recruits from off island. When you don't have everybody at this table, the system falls apart, and who's going to get hurt at the end of the day? It's all of you when you go home, and on your camera, you're seeing this guy jumping your gate, stealing your lawnmower, and taking your stuff, let alone getting your house where you're going to have to shoot him.
Okay, time's up.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
So I object to the assumptions in the question. Do we actually know how many times the judiciary has extended probation periods? Do we have the data, or we're making assumptions? So I sat as the pro tem when Judge Sokola retired, and I was the judge for the drug court until the new judge came on. I sat as pro tem when Judge Bradalli retired until the new judge came on. So I handled their dockets as well as my own. So this is what I'm seeing as a snapshot. Assuming in arguendo that the question is factually accurate, do we know how many available spots there are in drug rehabilitation programs? I think LRC is what, 50? And that program is, Mr. Torres, 50? And that program is what, 6 months long? LRC, New Beginnings, do we have enough seats to treat them? Because if not, there's a backlog that delays the completion, right? Additionally, Mr. Torres is correct. It's $5,000 if you have a fine in drug court. How do you support yourself with maybe prior convictions or lack of education and pay for your food, pay for everything, and pay for the $5,000 in fine? So just to wrap it up, what I'm seeing, because I also handle restitution court, is from 2009 to present, there are only 1,000 restitution cases over, 16 years? So that means restitution means they couldn't complete it, they didn't go to jail, and they came to my court, in restitution court. So from 2009 to now, there's 1,000, approximately 58 restitution cases. Those did not complete their pleas over 16 years. That's how much. Divide that by 16 years. Thank you.
We will now move forward to question 4. This will be our last question before we take a break. Just a reminder, students, you can turn in questions for the later part of the forum. We'll be collecting those during our break. Question number 4. This is for Judge Kwan and Senator Terlahi. Do you support the 3 strikes law, such as imposing a minimum of 25 years for a 3rd felony conviction? Should judges retain discretion in sentencing under this law, particularly when a less serious or nonviolent offense is counted as a 3rd felony? Judge Kwan?
So let me understand the question correctly. They're asking if I would support the 3 strikes law that requires a minimum of 25 years? Is that correct? The current 80.37.2 imposes a more harsh, our existing law imposes life imprisonment, not 25 years. So the current law that we have on the books since 2013, Public Law 32-49, imposes a life sentence. So I am confused as to why the forum is asking me if I support a 3 strikes law that reduces the punishment to a minimum of 25 years instead of life. That being said, the current law on the books since 2013 imposes a life sentence after 2 strikes, and you get a 3rd. It says, shall be sentenced to imprisonment for life and is not eligible for suspension of the sentence, probation, parole, or release. So I do not understand that question. Now, the second part, Should judges retain discretion? I believe that is why the legislature and the people allowed us to serve, to trust our discretion. Now, this has not been tested because in my years on the bench and when I was a prosecutor and the chief when I spoke, I don't think 80.37.2 has ever been invoked. I don't recall on my 7 years and as a prosecutor for 12, I don't recall anybody ever charging it or putting it as a special allegation. But that was passed in 2013. In 2015, the legislature granted the judges power to alter or decide otherwise from what is stated. It's called the Justice Safety Valve Act. Title 9 GCA 80.39, 39.1, 39.2, and 39.3. It was implemented in 2015, 2 years after the two strikes law, which gives judges discretion to vary from the minimum. I do not know, since it's not tested, I do not know if that actually gives us the discretion to vitiate the three strikes. That has yet to be tested. I do not know. Madam Senator?
Thank you. And I do agree with the three strikes law that we have on the books today. It's after 2 violent felonies, your third is going to result in life imprisonment. It's very harsh, but these are violent felonies. They're listed as aggravated murder, murder and manslaughter, aggravated assault, kidnapping, criminal sexual conduct in the first and second degree, and others. There are others. There's a long list. But so, yes, I think that should be implemented. I'm curious to hear from the prosecutors and former prosecutors why not, because maybe that's the problem that we're not addressing is why are they not charging under that statute? Or why are they arguing for lesser penalties? And the safety valve law, I think in the last term, we've closed some of those loops because we did not want reduced sentences for certain violent crimes. And we didn't want any discretion in those things. And as you'll see throughout the criminal code, it's really a kind of a balancing practice or a debate like we're having here between judges' discretion versus no discretion at all, and our policy is just going to mandate these sentences. So we have a lot of mandated sentences that sometimes the judges tell us, that they want some discretion, but we don't allow it. And then we have some where we allow discretion because what they've told us is every case is different. Some of these backgrounds are not the same. The felonies are not the same. For example, murder is not the same as some of the other things listed here. Possession of child pornography, but those are all treated the same. And I'm not sure part of the question seem to be referring to should we include less serious or nonviolent offenses in counting as a third felony? I think that's what happened in some of the other states, and they had to reverse their policies because we really want to have a sentencing that matches the crime or kind of has that justice is going to be served. So if you are, a small theft, that's not good. You're going to be punished. However, you should not go to life imprisonment for that, the same as aggravated murder. So just that scale that we have to continue to balance. But I absolutely support violent felonies, third strike, absolutely. We should remove some discretion because obviously they were not rehabilitated after the first or the second. And I think there are some crimes on Guam that the prison and the counselors and all the professionals will tell you, we cannot rehabilitate right now. It's that type of a crime. They either have to go to the States and try different treatments, but we are not able to do that here. So if we are not able to protect the public, then we have to hold them in prison. That's really, to me, the underlying thing. If we are able to protect the public, such as supervision while they are going through drug treatment, such as supervision while they are completing other things, then maybe. But if we are not able to protect them, we don't have enough supervision, we don't have enough drug treatment, we don't have treatment for sexual conduct offense persons, that's a whole other mental capacity. Then we, by releasing them, would just be putting the people at risk of harm. And so that's, I think, always the underlying factor that should be examined. But otherwise, 3 strikes, yes, for violent crimes.
Anybody else would like to add?
I just want to talk on the discretion portion of this. You know, I had Judge Abati. Everyone knew him, you know, as a very fair judge back in the time, and he was my criminal law professor. He asked me, you know, Berdali, you're going to be a police officer, you know, and there's a trend now of mandatory sentencing. Would you take my judge's discretion away when it comes time for sentencing when you're before the court? Because when you pull over each and every person, you know, for a traffic violation, do you give a ticket to everyone, you know, or do you use discretion? I said, yeah, well, every case is different, you know, there's a situation, I'll give a warning, and there's no mandatory law for me to give every person a ticket every single time I pull them over. We have police discretion. Well, thank you for saying that, because I want you to consider that when you go into the area of taking judicial discretion away. And that was an insight that it was very insightful to hear Judge Abati say something like that. This mandatory sentencing laws taking judicial discretion away. And I appreciated that from Judge Abati. It was a lesson well learned, because it's something I think even probably Chief Ignacio knows. When we're in traffic and we're pulling everyone over, we had a mandatory that we have to give everyone a ticket. Man, I think the fines, or if there are going to be fines, the judicial will have a lot of revenue there. Thank you.
And, you know, I just want to say briefly, obviously, third strike laws are being repealed nationwide. It's really a disfavored practice. Guam has gone the other route, and we have very specialized, like, we even have a 2-strike law, like criminal sexual conduct, right? What's the sentence if you have a second conviction of CSC? Mandatory life without parole. So we already have it for the really serious crimes of, you know, criminal sexual conduct. Homicide, there really aren't a lot of repeat offenders for homicide. And, you know, it's very, you know, curious that, you know, we're imposing jail times instead of trying to treat individuals. We really don't have sex offender training here. And it's really sad because, you know, what do they say? Like 30–40% of the offenders were molested when they were children themselves. And, you know, with the high incidence of, you know, the Catholic Church cases just ended. And we may have created a lot of perpetrators through the church. And we have an obligation to make them right, to fix them, to ensure that they don't hurt other people? Or should we just throw them in jail and throw away the key after they themselves were victims? So it's a very complicated issue, and it really requires a lot of thought and consideration. Thank you.
Hey, friends, thanks for giving me an opportunity. Before we go into break, and I think we're going to break next, I just want to acknowledge and thank, and we can give them a round of applause, the students from Tizan High School. I'd like to thank Mr. Del Priore for bringing them here today. Some of these students, if not most of them, are also students in our police training program with Tizan High School. So I want to acknowledge them and thank you for joining us today. It's great that you're out here in the community getting involved in something important like this forum today. And so your homework is to write for Mr. Captain Santos a summary of what happened today. That's your GPD homework.
I would also like to acknowledge Senator Sabina Perez. Okay, we will now take a 10-minute break. Thank you.
Number 5, how does the construction of a new DOC facility fit into the conversation of the three strikes law, and especially in terms of addressing overcrowding and improving rehabilitation outcomes? This is for Director Bordalio and Senator Terlahi.
Thank you for that question. We are starting a new prison task force. The governor has approved, and part of the discussion is looking at the facility, the current facility master plan. It called for a combined jail and prison. I think the consultants from Georgia, I talked to the consultant there, and it's an unusual concept because in states, they have the state penitentiary or prison separate from county jails or jails. Jails are normally, or detention centers are built next to the court because those are, again, as I said earlier in this forum, they're different kind of, they're waiting for their day in court. And to have, the DUI process up there in Manila and then housed within the vicinity of where a convicted inmate who's serving, 3 life sentences that's just not good chemistry. So this forum really does align the theme of 3 strikes because it's more or less when you're doing the research toward the population that is sentenced, not really the pretrial. It's a research question asked really why individuals completing their sentence go back outside into community and commit crimes versus why a pretrial. That's a different kind of, I think, research approach the graduate students should look at if they're going to look at 3 strikes and you're going to, make an argument or a case that 3 strikes are effective, then you got to ensure that you're identifying the population that's studied. The population studied are inmates who have been convicted. It is going to be a factor. It will be a sort of like a variable in play about the effectiveness of the rehabilitation, especially when it's disrupted by the largest population that's up there in our adult correction facility in Manila, in the prison. The largest population, the pretrial, in those tents, those tent domes that were supposed to be temporary, but they've been there for 21 years, and we're lucky a typhoon doesn't come and blow it away. Otherwise, we'll end up like Nebraska, where you had over 180 inmates who were displaced, and now we're in a critical emergency situation. Where do you house them now? Every time there's a typhoon or a storm that approaches Department of Corrections, we place about 180 to 200 pretrial detainees in our visitor area, visitation. And that's just until the storm passes. Next time those tents go down, we're going to have to, there's going to have to have some conversations on where do you place those pretrial detainees. So again, as I said, part of the prison planning is re-looking at that concept of a combined jail and prison, which you don't have in America. And I want to add on too, you don't have there's rarely do you ever have a co-ed facility. We have women pretrial and inmates, women inmates. They're a very low population, but they're all in the same place on Post 8. The Attorney General had an opportunity to go visit the place there. And when he looked around, we were explaining to him, you have federal detainees there, you have female inmates who have already been adjudicated. They need an opportunity for rehabilitation programs. But you have local pretrial women detainees there. And it is dangerous when you have women in the same facility where men are at, right? And we need to protect those women. One of the concepts we're possibly looking at, it's a conversation, is that next to the court, I think the judiciary, they were trying to look at the Red Cross building there. And I've had some communications with National Red Cross. That might be an area that if it's turned over to the government of Guam, we may use that to move all our women out of Manila and have them there. They'll be in a safer place. I mean, we need to protect and ensure segregation. It is the number one thing. When I went to correction school in the Army at Fort McClellan, Alabama, the first thing that they say is segregation, segregation. In Oahu, Hawaii, there was a inmate pretrial that was killed by a convicted inmate. And the litigation that's going to happen is because there wasn't any segregation. We have a very troubling segregation challenge up there at Department of Corrections with those pretrial inmates. And that's why we have to think about if there's going to be any kind of construction, where can we construct a prison for a prison? Where can we construct detention facilities and jail? And that's I think it's going to involve even federal officials that are going to come into play here, because they don't want to send their federal detainees up to Manila where our prison is at. They weren't even part of the conversation in the master plan. And that's a gap. Thank you.
I agree with the chief in that if the prison is supposed to rehab, then we need to make sure that it's able to do that by its facilities, by its resources. If the prison is supposed to deter, then we need to determine if it's actually deterring. And but I actually believe that the cost of the construction of a prison should be dealt with or considered, at least by policymakers, separately than the three strikes law. So this question puts them together and says, should we like lessen this three strikes law so that we don't have too many people going into the prison that's already full? I don't agree with that kind of rationale. I just think separate those questions. They have to be, because again, the question is safety to the public. Are we going to keep the public safe by saying it's too expensive to put people in prison? Or are we going to keep the public safe by saying, if we can't assure that this person is not going to harm the public, then we must put them in prison. So that's a separate question. And that's the challenge that we have before us, is to, we actually agreed in maybe 2 terms ago that we were going to move forward with the new prison. There were plans made, and the chiefs talked about those plans. I guess they want to redo them. But it took decades for the people of Guam and the legislature to finally say, yes, we're going to move forward on a new prison. I was very happy that they're finally doing that, because no one wants to say we're going to put any money towards a prison, but the conditions are just such that we have to right now. So we agreed, but now in this new majority, they've reversed that. There is no funding in our budget right now for a new prison. So I am perplexed as to why this new change of thought. And again, we have a lot of facilities that we are considering we must move forward on. We must move forward on a new prison. We must move forward on a new hospital. We must build these facilities. And I feel like we're going backwards in having the debate again as to whether we're going to fund them, because we've agreed to fund them. But the money was prioritized elsewhere. Tax breaks were prioritized over funding these things as well. So there's different reasons, but whether we're putting somebody under a 3 strikes law in prison or not, I think should be determined based on their risk to the public, the risk to our people, versus whether we're going to fund a prison. That's a whole other question, and both of them should be done. Thank you.
Thank you. If any of our other panelists would like to join in, you guys have 2 minutes as well to state.
I just want to add, so the third strikes, really, the question underlying all of this is, how do we reduce recidivism, right? Third strike laws, that's what it's intended to do, discourage people from committing new offenses, right? But that's also assuming that after your first strike, you actually got treatment, you received rehabilitation, and that's really not the case, right? And so let me just give you some numbers. In 2011, there were 611 people held at the Department of Corrections. Yesterday, there were 938. And so the third strike law, whether it exists or not, doesn't really affect the population at the Department of Corrections. In fact, there are many first offenders in there, like people in there for stuff like fraudulent use of a license plate or retail theft. So there are nonviolent people in DOC right now. And I think the models that we have to look at are like California, where they were sued, and the California Supreme Court said you cannot have a occupancy greater than 120%, right? And so that's one of the options moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to our next question. Do you think elevating misdemeanors into felonies encourages rehabilitation, or does it merely increase punishment without addressing the root causes? This is for Judge Kwan and Director Hattori.
Actually, Guam already does a good job doing this. Like, for example, family violence, right? If it's your third offense, it's a felony and you face minimum 1 year in jail. DUI, first offender, by your third offense, it automatically becomes a felony. So there are existing sentencing structures that the legislature's already created. But our main point is that really the judges are in the best position to make those decisions, and they should have the discretion on what counts or what doesn't count as an offense. And so even like, for example, family violence, a perfect example. Family violence has the exact same definition, whether it's a felony or a misdemeanor, right? And so the prosecutor can charge one person as a felony, exact same conduct, charge someone else with it as a misdemeanor. All right, and then of course it's up to the defense counsel to move to reduce it. But it's really scary when you don't know if it's a felony or misdemeanor you're committing, right? I mean, obviously you shouldn't be committing a crime at all, but so that's one of the issues, is that there needs to be the judges need that kind of discretion to say, like, look, why are you making it a felony against this individual when similar cases and there's no injury, it's only a misdemeanor. And so the judges in that particular case where it's an identical definition, which probably needs to get fixed, the judges have that discretion. And I think judges generally exercise their discretion a little harsher than we would hope. But oftentimes, I have to admit, they get it right. They listen to the psychiatrist or any psychological reports. They of course listen to the victim's family, and they do listen to our clients and our clients' family as well. And so, and that's what makes being a judge so difficult. They have to make those tough decisions, but that's why they're appointed, confirmed, and voted on every 6 or 8 years. But thank you.
Thank you, Director.
So, as I told you in the beginning, I'm seeing the defendant and his family or her family in various aspects in different cases. So, for instance, you have the small claims case or the collection case, which causes them to fight. I'm just giving you a hypothetical, which then causes the family violence case, the defendant against the wife, which then causes the divorce case, which then bleeds into the juvenile delinquency of the children, and then leads to subsequent other types of cases, collections cases, small claims, and then traffic matters. So I'm seeing a collapse, a systemic collapse of that person's world, right? I'm seeing the whole context of it, not just in criminal. I want to give you some statistics. It's going to spin your head, but try to absorb the whole picture. According to the 2020 census, there's 123,000 of us. 29,000 of us live below the poverty line. September 22, 2025, PDN reported that Guam has a 3.2% unemployment rate, which is great. Unemployment being defined as you looking for a job, but you can't find one. So we have a 3.2%. Only 2,270 people are unemployed. That's fantastic. What the article goes on to say is that 52,000 of our population over 16 years old is not seeking employment. So they are not counted as unemployed. Subtract the retirees, subtract the full-time students, you're looking at a ballpark of 32,000 people who are not employed and are not looking for employment. These are our numbers. Put this in the context of minimum wage is $9.25 an hour. That equals $1,480 every month. The average rent on Guam for a two-bedroom house is $1,500. This question asks, does it increase the punishment without addressing the root cause? What is the root cause? I don't know. But I do know also that a plate of ice, methamphetamine, costs $35 on the street. A case of beer costs $17.89. Mr. Moylan, AG Moylan's position is perfectly valid. He believes, and is right, he believes that it's the drugs that's causing it. Is it the drugs or is it the poverty? Is the poverty causing the drugs? I don't know. From my position where I'm sitting, I don't know. But this is what I'm seeing. I can only speak to what I'm seeing. So what I'm seeing with this person's life is it's spiraling. So what is left for him or her? All that is left is for him to live now. And a plate of ice is $35, and a case of beer is $17. According to the 2023 submission by the Bureau of Statistics and Planning, the average DOC population last year was 830 people, approximately. As of 2 days ago, it was 938. According to their submission, 85% of those in DOC admitted to substance abuse and use. That equals about 706. Is the drugs causing the crime, or is the poverty causing the drugs? As I said, AG Moylan's position is perfectly valid, and that's his right to do so, and I'm glad he's sure. I'm not so sure. So, in reference to the question, do you think elevating misdemeanors to felonies encourages rehabilitation, or does it merely increase punishment without addressing the root cause? Since I'm not sure, I think it may increase the punishment without addressing the cause, because I'm not sure what the cause is. Thank you.
Thank you. If any of our panelists would like to chime in.
Okay, you know, what is it that we're looking at for putting things on paper? We're looking at fear. I know the social workers aren't going to like this, but why do people respond or don't respond? It's because they're fearful of the punishment. Without fear, you're not going to have people changing behavior. Unfortunately, that seems to be the law of nature. People don't want to go to jail because, one, they heard their friends are all getting raped in jail, or they're not able to get out because they're getting beat up in there. I'm not saying that that's right. I'm just saying that don't try to put cherries and flowers when you talk about a prison. A prison is supposed to have a very bad connotation to people. I don't want to go to prison because they're going to hurt me in there. Okay? So that's what we first have to acknowledge. Second, whether you make it a misdemeanor or a felony, the courts and the legislature, that's a public policy decision for the legislature to decide. But whether or not we're actually imposing the sentences to create the fear, to create the deterrence, so that when people talk, when the criminals in prison talk, they know that this AG, this judge, this criminal justice system is not going to hold your hand. You're going to be punished, and that's the end of the story. We don't have the money to be having rehabilitation programs, and those guys are failures. Ask them how Lighthouse is doing. I'm hearing from the prosecution end that the drug dealers are in Lighthouse looking at who the people are that are drug addicted, trying to find out who their suppliers are, from Dedito to Agate. They're gaming the system. The word among the meth addicts should be, they're going to find you, they're going to lock you up, they're not going to be rehabilitating you in prison, you're just going to spend hard time, you keep it up, you're not getting out. I'm sorry, there is a black and white of law enforcement, and you can talk yourself blue with how much money you want to invest, how much time you want to invest, but when each of you become a victim, a crime victim, that's it. Your world perception changes once you become a crime victim. So the first question I ask you, have you ever been a victim of crime? How do you feel about that guy that just jumped into your house and raped your kid, or is found in your kid's bedroom at night? Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanna say, first of all, you know, I spent 3 years in the Guam Police Department, Violent Street Crimes Task Force as a narcotics investigator. I had to deal with individuals who were amping up on crystal meth, right? And I had to make connections also with behavioral health professionals to get an individual caught with an ice pipe who has an addiction. The prison, the Department of Corrections, the combined jail and prison up there with 250 pretrial up there and another 300 some sentenced prisoners, that's not an area for drug rehabilitation. I went to a conference in National Healthcare Corrections Association, and I met deputy sheriffs who said their jail is being used as a drug treatment center. Jails for pretrial is not a drug treatment center. And our prison up there, that's a combined jail and prison, is not a drug treatment center. My hat's off to behavioral and health for having an RSAT, a residential substance treatment program up there. But that's not the area and environment for drug treatment. An area for environment for drug treatment is where some of the individuals can afford fly them off island. The individual who have that money and that income, fly them off island when they send their loved one off. But with the economic situation we have, a lot of our residents in here in our community don't have the money and income to fly their loved one off to get a meth treatment. And there's success stories of individuals overcoming the battle of meth addiction. There are success stories there. But it has to be an environment where you have professionals there. And we have to expand that. Again, as I said, if you just only concentrate enforcement and lock everyone up for an ice pipe and everything else, I've been in narcotics. If you do that enforcement, and then you go to the schools and you preach education, say no to drugs, there are only two areas there. You're missing a gap with the treatment, the substance abuse treatment. And that's not just crystal meth, it could be alcoholism too. The military has been very successful in that. They've weeded out individuals in the military who've had problems to veterans in the military who came from wars because they have a robust area. The Veterans Administration concentrates in trying to get their veterans clear of those addictions. Thank you.
Thank you once again, panelists. Let's move on to our next question. States like California and Washington have modified their three strikes laws due to unintended consequences. What lessons should Guam apply before considering misdemeanors to felony conversion? This is for Senator Tlahi and AG Moylan.
I think California and Washington, the issues that they ran into were treating all crime the same and in a resulting same punishment, same sentencing was unfair. And they wanted to treat theft differently than violent felonies, such as homicide, such as assault. And I think that we in Guam should continue to do the same, treat different levels of crime differently, sentence them differently, make the sentences fair based on the level of crime, as much as we can. And we kind of make an exception to this when we go to the, well, or maybe not. When we go to the three strikes laws, I think we've done a very good job of requiring, for sure, if there are three felonies, then we are going to treat that as a violent crime and with a much stiffer penalty. If they are lesser crimes, such as misdemeanors, currently our law doesn't do that. But there are other, well, not the three strikes law, but there's other laws as to sentencing that allows the judges to consider the criminal record, the misdemeanors, the felonies that were not violent, and to consider all of that in the release, consider all of that in the sentencing. And so I just think we have to continue to punish fairly, rehabilitate if possible, push for the resources to do that, but to treat crime differently because it is different on different levels. And I think we all want to see, and one of the interesting things to me about this three strikes law that Guam has on the books is that when the hearing was held, I wasn't a senator at that time, but it was the victims who came out and said, why three strikes? Why not one strike? And why not punish them to the utmost capability of the law after just one violent felony. And so I do think we need to keep the victims in mind. We need to keep these just, harsh penalties when it is very clear they are not being rehabilitated. There is no deterrence in any of this sentencing that we are, hanging over their heads. They're not deterred. So again, back to then what we have to do is protect the public from any future harm. So I think that's what my understanding of the California and Washington is what they've tried to do, is just make it fair and to treat the harsh crimes with harsher penalties and not sweep every misdemeanor into that category or every felony, in fact, under that category, but the violent ones. And, but that, I think, does not take away the discretion of the judge to treat repeat offenses of any kind when they are considering release, when they're considering sentencing. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that was a interesting question. California and Washington, if you guys ever look at the national news, are considered what they call blue states, right? Well, what is a blue state? A blue state is a state that's soft on crime, woke, gives second chances, gives as many chances as necessary, has minimum amounts now that you can be arrested for. That's why their targets, their Walgreens are closing down, because people are just mob rape, robbing, theft of these places. This is what happens when you don't have law and order, when there is no fear. Now, use the examples. Texas, Florida, Wyoming, they call them the red states, right? It's a political term. But what it shows is that you've got the discussion about cash bail. You are accused of a crime, probable cause is satisfied. The judge has no discretion on allowing for release unless you put money up. Doesn't mean that you're not going to get out, but you're not going to get an unsecured performance bond. And by the way, for those bonds, has anything ever been collected? No, because we don't have the attorneys. Somebody violates, you think that we're going to go after them and squeeze a turnip for somebody that has no money and waste my prosecutor's time to go after a performance bond? So what's the end result? That person, they got their performance bond yanked, they got their release yanked because they just created another crime victim. 2 binders full of that. Look at those numbers in there. So the discussion that we should be asking ourselves, are we a pro-crime victim jurisdiction, Guam, or are we a pro-criminal jurisdiction? The 3 strikes law occurred because we were a pro-crime victim jurisdiction. Filipinos, Chamorros, the people on Guam, are nowhere close to what you're seeing in Oregon, Washington, California, New York. Those guys are nuts over there. The fact that they're fighting ICE, that they have protests out there, it's scary when you don't have law enforcement, when you don't have the chief of police, when you don't have the judges. That is what they stand for. 3 strikes stands for law and order, safety, send your kids to college, get a good education, focus on successes in life. Everything that we're talking about today are all failures. This is so negative that we have to listen to this. Do we have to build a bigger prison? We're not going to build a bigger University of Guam. What about a law program on Guam? You need money to do that. And when you're building a bigger prison, that money is getting taken away from us. And by the way, don't leave this discussion without understanding. Get the feds to pay for that prison. They are housing their people up here, and I don't care if it's $117 a day. You make them pay $1,000 a day. They print money. They have the federal funds. You make them pay for that prison up there. This is where our governor is failing us. She's forgetting some fundamentals in government. And look at what the problem is. The problem is too many criminals on Guam. Meth addicts are the problem on Guam. Price is too low. You drive that price up, you lock that port down, price goes up, and what happens? They're going to be getting alcoholism. They're going to go to alcohol, lesser things to deaden the nerves. Alcoholism can be managed. Meth can't. It's just going to swamp the boat, too much money for this. And by the way, why do you think I changed the slogan for that office? Give us, the crime victims, power. Crime victims fight back. My grandfather was a boxer. Boxing, fair sport. Go in, there's going to be one winner. You go into court, You're not looking for both sides to win. The people of Guam accuse you of committing a crime. Get ready, because we're going to throw you in jail. That has to be the discussion. And I get it. You know, the public defender, those defense attorneys, everybody's got rights. But deterrence, fear, and making sure that these people on this billboard, if you don't get it in life, you're going to be put in prison, and we're going to keep you there. 3 strikes, you're out. 5 things I mentioned: deterrence, safety, punishment, restitution. 4 of the 5 are for crime victims. Rehabilitation. That's up to the community. If you have the money to try to rehabilitate somebody, and you can rehabilitate them, then maybe that's a good thing. But the judges are looking at 5 factors on sentencing, and 4 of them are for all of us. 1 of them is for the criminal. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Atori, would you like to speak?
Okay, so, you know, I mean, the 3-strike law, I think it's completely unnecessary in Guam anyways, because, like, for example, criminal sexual conduct, right? That's something no one here is in favor of it, right? For that one, for your second offense, you already get a life without parole. So you can't get worse than that. We don't have the death penalty on Guam. So a 3rd-strike law, what is it really going to apply to? Second-degree CSC, currently, if you're a second offender, you get life without parole. I mean, that's the judge has ability to sentence you to that. So, you know, California and Washington, you know, and really crime is not a party thing. Democrats or Republicans, everyone is anti-crime, right? And so we just have different ways of approaching it. One side believes you could throw in the 92% of the people that are charged with a crime but are not going to do anything, not going to commit a new crime. Let them sit in jail, let their families lose their house, lose their apartment because nobody's paying the rent. And that's one view. The other view is, you know, let's look at the risk. If they're not really a risk to the public or to the risk of non-appearance, let them out. Let them work. Let them keep supporting their family. And believe me, when they plead guilty, right, and many of them do, and when they accept responsibility, if they're treated fairly and not like animals in a cage, worse than the dogs at game, then, you know, that's going to impact them a little better. There'll be less trauma that we'll have to deal with, and that they'll have to deal with in recovery and the treatment. And so I think the lessons we could learn from California and Washington are absolutely do not do 3rd strikes, and continue what we're doing with there's sufficient sentencing. I mean, right now, if you use a weapon, it's 5 to 25. If there's a vulnerable victim, you know, which is basically anyone older than 55, a tourist, and I mean, there's other categories, 5 to 25 on top of the offense. So we don't really need a 3-strike law, which will give someone a life sentence for fraudulent use of a license plate or retail theft to feed your family. We have very specific sentencing laws that target very specific criminal behavior that we all despise. And so I think, you know, 3rd-strike laws, they sound good, they make people feel safe, but at the end of the day, they do nothing more than drive up the cost of incarceration, and then they really limit the amount of resources available for everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you. Now on to our next question. How would a stricter 3-strikes law, especially with misdemeanor conversion, affect Guam family-based communities socially and economically? This is for Chief Ignacio and AG Moylan.
Yeah, so I'm not aware that Guam has any conversion laws that make misdemeanors into felonies, or vice versa. But I'm not sure that I'm comfortable saying that we should take misdemeanors and use them after like maybe 3 misdemeanor offenses, you're counting towards 1 felony. Case in point, right? We run into a lot of homeless people. And really the most criminal offense that they've committed is probably criminal trespass. And so, you know, converting or a conversion of 3 criminal trespass to 1 felony, or if we're going to take all these criminal misdemeanors and say, well, you keep committing misdemeanors, we're going to sentence you now under the three strikes law for life, which I don't think it qualifies though under our current three strikes law. So I think that's the thing behind it. But I think misdemeanors are their own class of crimes and should remain as misdemeanors because we've already done a good job. I think Guam does a good job in identifying crimes and whether they're going to become a misdemeanor or they fall into the misdemeanor category or to the felony category. So I don't think we should be considering any conversions of criminal misdemeanors to felonies. I think they're a separate class of crimes. And again, I go back to those examples of homeless people, right? You know, very disadvantaged, don't have the skills to become employable or be employed. And, you know, they just bounce around from Hagatnya to Tuman, you know, and there's discussion today about kicking all the homeless out of Tuman. And we've worked that issue many times before with GVB, with GHRA, with the hotel industries, you know, and they just, you know, they're homeless, so they don't have a place to go. So they keep migrating back to Tuman. And so, you know, it is an issue that we just have to keep working on until there are solutions for people like the homeless. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, I agree with what the chief said. The problem on Guam is that the senators have done a very good job on creating a criminal code that distinguishes between misdemeanors and felonies. So there's nothing that comes off of my mind in terms of what should be bumped from a misdemeanor to a felony. As you guys know, the Attorney General in every jurisdiction, the district attorneys, they look at the facts and then decide what charges could be brought based upon the police reports and the facts. So, you know, in terms of that question, I see the real question that should be asked here is how is the enforcement and the sentencing? When the statute says that you could be sentenced up to 5 years, 8 years, are the sentences actually coming down that way? And an extensive report needs to be made. And that's why in our office, I'm requiring the prosecutors to prepare those sentencing reports. And unless some of you guys understand this, the probation offices issue normally what they call a pre-sentence investigation report. In that report, all the background information and all the statutes and so forth are given to the judges, and the judges will be looking at that document as well as the defense attorney and the attorney general's briefs to decide what would be a fair sentence based upon the information, okay? But what we need to do is we need to separate out the meth addiction, and a lot of that comes from the arrests that deal with stealing property. Whenever you see, by the way, somebody get pulled over because their license plate is out of registration or their car's out of registration, that's usually the first indicator that it's a meth addict in that car, and it's usually confirmed because they're finding the ice pipes, they're finding the firearm in that car. And by the way, you all should be shocked when you see that firearm in that car. Who do you think they're going to use that firearm against? They're going to be breaking into your place tonight to grab some property, and if they see you, they're probably going to use that firearm against you, okay? That's the level of danger that we're dealing with right now. So misdemeanors to felonies, I don't think that there's really a need for that, but the sentencing is important. The public has to see, when they see that news article, this person's been arrested, you see them like on the ground or, you know, they look like hell in those photos. What happened to that person? And that's the problem with the criminal justice system. From the time that they're charged to the time that we see what justice occurred from it, it's usually years, year to more on that. So, you know, this is the discussion that has to be made. And between that time and the time that they're convicted, is that person going to commit another crime? Are they going to end up on another misdemeanor because they're stealing things, because they let a meth addict out of jail? You can't trust a meth addict. Somebody comes into before you for an arrest that just got 24 hours ago, he found a meth pipe in it. And this is with extreme respect to Judge Kwan. I tell my prosecutors, get that guy in jail because you think that he's going to care about that order that the judge has signed saying that he can be released. Meth addiction, anyone that understands what addiction is, and especially methamphetamine, which is a synthetic drug, it's not natural, like cocaine and heroin that we were talking about before. Meth is so different than those drugs. It was designed to change your brain so that you need it and you'll do anything to get it. So to see a piece of paper, and that's why, look at these reports. 320 violations in 30 days. That's the type of triage we are dealing with out there. The Guam Police Department, my prosecutors in the AG's office, and ultimately the judges having to pass sentences. So, that just focus on sentencing, focus on, are we protecting people in the community? I think that has to be the standard, especially of the Attorney General's office. Thank you.
Thank you, AG. If any of our other panelists would like to chime in.
I just want to say that, it's already well known because I've publicly indicated that Guam has the highest pretrial confinement. We have 549 total, larger than the 388 with a total of 937 inmates that we have at the Department of Corrections. But one thing that makes a distinction between these pretrial inmates and the ones already sentenced. The ones in sentences are going through rehabilitation programs. They'll go for RSAT, substance abuse, or what they also go through is work credit or work employment programs where they get a job in the community, preparing for their release, and part of their income goes to the victim's assistance, to victims of the crimes and restitution. But what happens to these 549 pretrial detainees? Well, they sit inside their cells or inside those dome tents and not participating in the rehabilitation programs, because that is a discussion that has to happen between the Attorney General or the attorney for that client, for that inmate who's on pretrial. So when they're staying idle and just waiting, and some of them up to 2 years of confinement before finally either they get acquitted or they're going to be convicted, in isolation, away from their families, the socioeconomic impact to their families of that. And then what happens if they're innocent? How do you pay back for that whole year, 2 years, and they were really innocent? Because they're presumed innocent to proven guilty in the court of law. But nothing is happening. Now, what, of course, we hope that can happen with the discussions between the Office of the Attorney General and their lawyers, because I've already assisted the Attorney General in passing out flyers for individuals, especially the ones who are non-U.S. citizens, if they'd be willing to negotiate with their lawyer in the Attorney General's office for going back to their islands. But what we hope happens is there's some agreement made that they can participate in a work credit program or community service while they're waiting for their day in court, or enroll in a drug treatment program, and we assure their presence there with the assistance of the court, because then maybe we might make an impact on the situation of over 85% of our inmates on crystal meth and coming up with the challenge of beating that addiction. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists. Due to limited time, we will be skipping our next question and proceeding to the final one. Afterwards, we will be proceeding with the audience questions. If certain misdemeanors are converted into felonies, how should they be counted under a 3 strikes framework? For example, should 3 converted misdemeanors equal 1 strike, or should each be treated as a full felony strike? This is for Senator Tlahi and Director Hattori.
I think, as the Attorney General stated, that the laws they're okay in regards to what is a misdemeanor and what is a felony. And we can always tweak those, and we continue to do that. Well, I'm going to speak for all the legislatures, past and present, that they continue to do that, to turn misdemeanors into felonies now. But that's not common. And I think should they be misdemeanors be treated as felonies? No. I think that's just because of the nature of the crime. And can we convert 1 or 2 or some? Yes, of course. We should always have that. The legislature should always be looking at that and see if that should be treated more seriously or punished more aggressively. But we have, misdemeanors such as false alarms, some misdemeanors, negligent burning. It's like accidental burning because you left something on or something like this, where they're not intending to hurt somebody. There are driving while impaired, as the public defender stated. That's on your first offense, a misdemeanor. Should that be treated as a felony on the misdemeanor? But we do have laws that graduate these penalties if you continue to repeat the crimes. So on a case-by-case basis, those can be converted to felonies, but I don't agree with any blanket law that says any misdemeanor that you do 3 times is going to be converted to a felony. I think we have laws in place that allows the judges to look at how many misdemeanors you have committed and to treat you accordingly, to treat you on pretrial release accordingly, to treat you on after trial imprisonment or otherwise accordingly, according to how many misdemeanors you have committed. And I think that's fair. I just want to say that, we have to always remember that there's so many different parts of the criminal justice system. It's not just the end after your trial sentencing. It's that you have to get arrested. We need law enforcement personnel. You have to get arrested. You have to, between arrest and the decision by the Attorney General, they have to decide to prosecute you. And you may be released at this time. And then they're going to decide, when will your trial be? What's going to happen to you before your trial? Are you going to be released or not? And all of these things, so much discretion goes into it. But the system, I think, requires that a lot of information go into that discretion. Like they make the decision based on the information that they get from the prosecutors, from the defense attorneys, from the police. So everybody has to do as thorough of a job as possible in order to put before the courts as much information on this person as possible to make a good assessment of risk of harm to the community as possible. And if there is a risk of harm, then again, I say the courts are empowered to keep them in prison, to not recognize personal recognizance or anything else if there is a risk of harm. I think they should not treat them blanketly. And then, what we have, if they put conditions on people, I think they should be held to those conditions. If you plead to conditions, you should be held to conditions. If you are on release based on conditions, you should be held to those conditions. And that's a matter, again, of enforcement by the Attorney General's office and the courts. And we need all of this, and this is the biggest challenge, I think, for everybody, is to happen promptly. The prompter justice is better justice. And so if we can get all of these systems and all of this information and the arrest, the prosecution, the pretrial supervision, the trial, and the sentencing to happen as promptly as possible, that's going to help our community to stay safer. And again, imprisonment should be, you put them in there because you're going to rehab them, or you're going to put them somewhere else to rehab them. And you're going to put them in there and, for a certain time. And what's going to happen when they come out? This is kind of, I think, the unresolved situation that Guam has. Not whether we have strong enough laws, but what happens after they go to a prison and are not able to be rehabilitated, and there is no system on Guam to rehabilitate, or they're not motivated they're not deterred, obviously, by imprisonment. What happens then? That's really what we have to solve, I think, and that every community on earth has to solve. Thank you.
So I think the question actually raises interesting possibilities, right? We've always talked about three strikes as a disincentive, but what if we create incentives? Like, what if someone is given a chance to reduce a felony to a misdemeanor if they go complete all their treatment and they go arrest-free for 5 years? What if they're able to go 10 years without being rearrested or charged with a new offense? Maybe reducing that misdemeanor and it maybe expunging it from his records. I think there's other ways of reducing recidivism other than just throwing people in jail. And I think those are, some of the options. I know drug court incentives work. And so I think it could also work. So rather than just raising misdemeanors to felonies, let's look at creating incentives for people for good behavior, for completion of their conditions and treatment to possibly get the chance to reduce a felony to a misdemeanor. Because believe me, once you have a felony conviction, it's hard to get anything out there, right? You're lucky if you can get a job that will pay you with a check. Most of your jobs will probably be under the table, like working on cars out of your yard or whatever. And so I think many people, especially when they, they do something rash when they're 20, when they're 30, they realize like, man, I need to get this off my record and so I can get a decent job and actually support myself and my kids. And so maybe incentives that reduce felony convictions to misdemeanors and then maybe expunge them or seal them after 10 years. Those might actually help reduce recidivism as well. But yeah, I don't think converting misdemeanors to felonies will help much. Thanks.
Thank you, Director. If no other panelists would like to chime in, we will proceed to the audience questions.
All right, so that decision will depend upon what crimes are trending in the population at any given time and any given era. Crimes are committed more frequently or less frequently and are charged more frequently or less frequently depending on the era and the circumstances prevalent at the time. So for instance, right now, the top 5 misdemeanors based on the amount of cases and charges in the last 5 years that have been charged over the last 5 years are 1, family violence, 2, driving while impaired, 3, assault, 4, driving while impaired BAC, and 5, harassment. That is a top 5 right now. But in 10 years, that may change. So you set a matrix now that may not hold 10 years from now. It may not be proper or fit, right? Now, understand, Attorney General Moylan's office is working as hard as they can. I see it. I also see Mr. Hattori's office working as hard as they can. All the judges, their dockets are full. But I need you to understand something. Remember, just because they are the most charged right now doesn't mean they're the most committed in terms of crime. The numbers are not clear. So let me give you an understanding of the bigger picture. And each Attorney General, and I've served under 7, including Mr. A.G. Moylan in his first term for a short period of time. In 2022, Guam Police Department made 4,397 arrests. The AG's office charged 1,233 cases because they made a choice as to what they can charge and will. In 2023, GPD made 3,649 arrests. The Attorney General's office charged 1,268 cases. In 2024, Guam Police Department charged 4,084 cases. The AG's office charged 1,315. They're working as hard as they can, and he's making a decision, which is his right to decide what to charge. But each AG will change, and the times and circumstances will dictate which crimes are more prevalent than others. The legislature will see fit to decide which to convert. But obviously, they're going to have to take into account, if you make a conversion for these sets of crimes, that may not be relevant in 10 to 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you once again, panelists. We will now proceed to our audience questions. So the first question is, do you support reinstating the death penalty for egregious violent crimes such as aggravated murder? If any panelists would like to chime in, you each have 2 minutes.
I think there's a reason why Guam got rid of the death penalty. And I don't know if we really want to go there, especially when pretty much every state in the country's trying to go away from it. The amount of resources it would take to prosecute a death penalty case would be tremendous. And also, I mean, I think the last time was what, in the, anyone know, the 50s or something was the last time? But I'm just, yeah, I just don't think it would fly very well, just because, I mean, it's a whole different type of prosecution. The cost would be way more significant because the amount of experts used to prove that that level of offense. And if you just look at the kind of cases that we've had that wouldn't really be death penalty cases, like, you know, Chad DeSoto, right? That was a bad case. He had a mental illness that was untreated. He was almost catatonic like a month before. And so I don't know if that would be a death penalty type case. I just don't think that we have, you know, this like mass murderers or those type of serial killers that would warrant the death penalty.
That issue is so sensitive in every generation, every jurisdiction. It really should be sent to the people of Guam to decide, because this goes from how you were raised, what religion you are, and making that ultimate decision. But realize Guam does have a death penalty. In the federal system, and I think it was the 1970s, I think my parents had told me, they hung somebody on Guam because of having violated a federal statute. So the federal laws prevail on Guam, and if people do a certain crime and the U.S. Attorney's Office decides to charge that, you could be executed on Guam under the federal system. So it is a legislative decision, but I would see a resolution to that, letting the people of Guam decide, because that's a very ominous thing to hold over somebody. And that's why, again, I say, build a bigger prison if we have to. Separate those that hurt us and put them there and keep them there until such time that they figure it out, or we want to let them go. That's the only solution right now. That's the only logistical solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to our next audience question. GDOE, in collaboration with the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center, have a goal of training school staff in trauma-informed care by 10%. This type of intervention is critical to identifying trauma early. Do you feel your agency or department is doing enough to address our youth at risk? Each panelist will have 2 minutes.
So in the Guam Police Department, mental health training is actually one of the things that we incorporate, especially with our police recruits. And so they're required to attend disability sensitivity awareness training, mental health first aid for adults, and mental health first aid for children. And then we have school resource officers, and they also have been trained in trauma-informed care. So one of the other things that we've incorporated into our police response is working in collaboration with the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center. They've re-implemented, because it came and it left and it's back up again, is the mobile crisis response team. And so we work with them, especially when we get calls of a person that may be suicidal, barricaded, person forgot to take their meds. And it's just one of those things that throughout the nation, the shift has gone from using police response and typical police response in collaboration with mental health partners, so that the police use mental health experts so that we can better respond to a mental health situation. And so that's how we incorporate mental health response in our daily work.
Thank you. Senator Talahi.
Yes, I agree with the chief, and we have supported the police department in this efforts, and the behavioral health have actually led the way in a lot of this to change our response in trauma, and especially when regards to youth in the schools, to fund programs for the youth, to show them how to take care of themselves in these types of situations to overcome. There are studies, and this is the basis of juvenile justice reform, that trauma causes youth to act differently, even the trauma of poverty. And that if we it's like they have studies that can predict a person's, whether they're going to, more likely to be in a life of crime or not, based on the trauma that they have suffered as a young person. And so I do believe, and we have as a legislature, Senator Taitakui as well has put in legislation, I think in her first term, Senator Perez did, to make sure that the schools have these programs that have been found to improve the situation for youth who have suffered trauma. And so we find them through the school counselors, we work with them in the schools through these programs. And so our job as legislatures is to recognize that this is what's happening, this is what we need to take care of in order to, again, that our criminal justice system as a whole is going to be better. Less crime if we can take care of these youth when they're young, and particularly in the ways the chief described, in responding to all ages. If they are suffering from mental trauma, we have teams that go out, and I want to give some credit to Guam Behavioral Health because they've really made that a priority as well, and the Guam Department of Education. Thank you.
And could I just add really briefly? So Guam actually has tools in its arsenal, right? We have the Youthful Offender Act, but unfortunately that hasn't been implemented. And what that does is it treats young adults between under 25 differently than inmates who, regular inmates. So like the idea is to separate them so that they don't become the soldiers of the lifers. So when they do get released, they're not, doing their errands for them when they get out, right? So they have the Youthful Offender Act that hasn't been implemented. And hopefully that's something we can implement going further. And then of course the Guam Supreme Court early last year, they wrote in a recent case involving Adriatico that when the brain development of a young adult is different, so you may be able to have a different sentence depending on psychiatric studies or evaluations. And so generally our office, we could do a lot better to help our young adults and our youth not reoffend. And I think that's something we'll be working on more in the future, of course. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next audience question is for AG Moylan. How many magistrate complaints have been dismissed without prejudice since you've been AG?
Well, every attorney general has that situation. So you got 48 hours in order to charge a case, right? So the police reports normally come in the ideal situation at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we literally have till about 12 o'clock in order to push everything together. And it's like that, I call it the helter-skelter, because you don't know if you're going to get 2 arrests and the police reports to charge people within 48 hours, which is a constitutional standard, or you're going to get 8. The standard right now that I've seen is 2 to 3 police reports for 1 prosecutor. You try doing that. I came in the office, there was about 8 prosecutors there. When I left office 20 years ago, I think we had about 13. Now we have about 16 to 18, but we got 2 more judges on the bench. Judge Tolentino and Judge, Talahi were the 2 more recent ones. They've grown the judicial system, and they've not grown the number of attorneys we have on the island, okay? So you're going to have all these funnels and whatever. The point is, if we can't get you at the magistrate, we're going to get you at the indictment phase, okay? Because the magistrate is just bringing you to get charged. Worst case scenario that I'm facing as an attorney general is that for whatever reason, we get a person that should be in there that is let go and is a violent person, and when they get let go, they go and finish the job with the victim. I've actually had protective orders issued when a defendant a suspect wasn't charged in the magistrate. So our office isn't perfect, but this is part of the system of why one of my goals, reduce the number of criminals out on the streets. A lot of these people are repeat criminals. You release them, they're ending up on another magistrate report within 3 months. And that's why the catch-release reports not only look at the violations, look at how many names came back in. There's at least 20 every 30 days. There's 20 names that should have been kept in prison that were ending up in another police report. So, yeah, magistrates aren't perfect. It's a helter-skelter, but what can you do? It's one of the things the prosecutor's got to deal with.
Thank you. That is all the time we have for audience questions. We will now proceed to introducing the certificates to each of our panelists. When your name is called, please proceed to the middle for a photo. Thank you. We would first like to recognize and give an appreciation out to Senator Therese Terlahi. Next, we would like to extend our appreciation to Chief Ignacio. Next, we would like to extend our appreciation to Director Hattori. We would like to extend our appreciation now to Judge Kwan. Next, we'd like to extend our appreciation to Director Bordalio. And lastly, we would like to extend our appreciation to A.G. Moylan. If I would have our forum group come to the front so we can all take a group photo with our panelists. And then the panelists will be done on a separate photo as well. Thank you. Thank you once again, panelists. As we wrap up today's forum, I want to thank our panelists for sharing their time, knowledge, and valuable insights on Guam's three strikes law. Your perspectives helped us better understand how this policy impacts our island's justice system and community. Thank you as well to our audience for joining us and engaging in this important discussion, and to our Capstone classmates and outreach team for all their hard work in making this event possible. Sizoes Maasi, and thank you again for being part of today's forum. Panelists, there's also food plates ready for you at the end over there.